Hey guys, this is Courtney from Will's Bloom, and today I'm here to talk to you guys about the Taurus Lunar Eclipse happening on November 8th at 4 a.m., 4:01 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm super glad that you guys came to join me for this one in particular because it is a very rebellious energy that I think is going to break us free from some area of disappointment, of discontent, and stagnation in our lives that we have been kind of straddling this last year, or a little bit over a year and a half, where we've had kind of one foot in a new world and one foot in the old world. And so I think many of us will find that this eclipse, while a little bit uncomfortable, is ultimately very liberating for us in our lives. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we can see the chart up here on the screen. We have the sun with the south node, with Mercury, with Venus, all in a stellium in the sign of Scorpio. And it is opposite the moon, with it, which is conjunct Uranus, and the north node in the sign of Taurus. So a lunar eclipse, a full moon, typically is going to be associated with endings of a rite of passage, a transition. And just so you guys know, in order to help facilitate this transition, I did create another video with my personal coach, KT, and she's going to kind of walk us through some advice about how to navigate change, especially during this eclipse where change is a little bit uncomfortable, where we're having to kind of face some resistance within ourselves. And not even just within ourselves, because Venus is involved here, there can be resistance from those around us. And so we're really going to get into that right now, because this eclipse is making a square to Saturn. You can see here, Sun's at 16, Saturn's at 18 degrees, so it's only 2 degrees apart. And the fact that this eclipse is making such a tight square with Saturn, and Uranus is here with the moon, we can see that it's bringing up this ongoing conflict that we've been going through since February of 2021, when we experienced our first exact Saturn-Uranus square. What is a Saturn-Uranus square? It is the two sides of our society, or internally within ourselves, that are at odds. One side of us that needs progress, that needs freedom, that needs more authenticity and individuality, and another side of ourselves that tends to take the more conservative approach, that tends to kind of fall in line with what we're supposed to be doing, that recognizes that we have certain limitations in our lives and kind of, holds ourselves back a little bit according to those limitations. And so we're going through this period in our life where we are deconditioning ourselves, or we're allowing our wild spirit to come more to the surface. So this Uranian energy with the moon and the north node is what wants to be embodied. We want to undergo revolution. We want to feel free. We want to break free from stagnation. And the biggest way you're going to tell this is happening in your life is the area of life where you feel a certain amount of discontent, where you kind of are losing interest in something, where you feel like you're being held back by something if you really tune in, or at the very least it feels like it's lifeless. And that is where Saturn tends to hold us and trap us. It wants to keep us in our old patterns, our old ways, stuck in certain boundaries to keep us safe. But the problem is that Uranus is not going to allow this to happen. We can't just stay with the status quo. Life is all about change. So Uranus is coming here for this really big moment where we're getting thrust into our new life, where we're getting pushed past our comfort zone, and we are going to be forced to make hard decisions about who, what place, what circumstance, what job, what personality type, whatever we need to do to leave behind, essentially. So it might be part of ourselves that we don't like anymore. It might be a friend group that we don't vibe with anymore. It might be an old job. But typically, because the sun and Mercury are with, because Venus and Mercury are with the sun and the south node, this is typically what we're going to leave behind. It's usually a perspective shift, because Mercury is all about our viewpoint, our vantage point. And it very much is about the way that we communicate and think about things. So it's not even just, how I think about life right now, but also how I tend to ingest and consume more validation of my existing beliefs. So there may be this point in which we realize we have to break with our current people that we talk to, or the current news channels that we listen to, or just our current way of learning and doing things in order to try something brand new, in order to get out of this rut so that we can acquire information in this really new way that is going to allow us to shift our perspective and not just be stuck in an echo chamber. The same thing goes for what we value, the people that we spend our time with, the things that we spend our money on, those things that we are putting our love into, that we're putting our care into, which is all Venus, the things that we are nurturing in our lives, these connections that we really have limited capacity for, are all going to be on the chopping block as well. We're going to start to analyze, was this a worthy purchase? Was this a worthy hangout? Did I feel better after hanging out with them? Do I feel like this is perpetuating an old cycle? And so we're really going to be facing, again, these hard decisions and asking ourselves, what is the right way to move forward? And is this coming with me? And a lot of this is going to be uncomfortable because of the square with Saturn. It is a hard aspect, and Saturn has a lot to do with, again, our previous conditioning. It's not even just conditioning of our own self and our own experiences. It's massive conditioning from society, from our friends, from groups around us that I'm sure, as you know, in 2021, when there was a lot of information going around, there's kind of only one way to think about things. And then if you don't think about things that way, then you might be ousted or you might be seen differently. And there is this kind of pressure of you have to, obey. You have to fall in line. And that is a very Saturnian thing. And we do this to ourselves. I have to get a job. I have to make this much money. I have to live up to this expectation. I have to go to bed at this time. And it's like, what do you want? What do you fucking want to do? Because if you want to go to bed at that time and make that much money, fine, so be it. But if you are forcing yourself, if you're whipping yourself, if you are obligating yourself, you might want to turn around and look at what it is you are pushing yourself to do. Because many times what we're pushing ourselves to do is not even something that is self-informed, but it's informed by our parents, by our friends, by our society, by certain conditioning and programming. And this is where this conditioning is going to start breaking down. This is where that wild spirit is going to rear its ugly head and say, enough is enough. I have been suppressed for far too long. I know what I want. I know what I need. And I think that's what this Saturn square is going to do, is it's really going to check in with what we want and what we need. This is a moon in Taurus on the North Node. This is about, in many ways, self-preservation. And Uranus is coming in here and saying, where do we have to rebel in order for our own self-preservation, in order for our own survival, in order for our own equilibrium and stability within our lives? Because it's enough sacrificing to make other people happy, which is very Venus, which is why it's on the South Node on this eclipse. We are giving up our ability to harmonize and just be okay with everything and go along and not stir up the pot in order to create true inner satisfaction, satiation, stability, comfort that lasts into the future, that really can build a strong foundation for us. And that's what Saturn has been trying to give us. But the problem is that when we overdo Saturn, which we have been so much these last few years, and just the fact that Pluto has been moving through Capricorn, there's been this kind of interesting relationship with authority, with power, of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and the way that we impose that upon ourselves and our boundaries and restrictions and all these things. And we have really, as a society, severely overused and abused the sense of boundaries, this sense of conditioning. Conditioning can be very helpful. It helps somebody learn how to eat with the fork and learn how to get on the metro in a way where you're not pushing everyone and shoving everyone. It's like there is a certain societal conditioning that is necessary for an optimal way of living. And then once you get past that, you become abusive. You become tyrannical. And this is on a society and individual level as well, where everyone has to think this way, everyone has to talk this way. You and your friends get together and have the same opinions, and if somebody thinks or says something differently, it's like, that's not going to be the case for everyone. But that's an example of this at work, and this is an area of your life where you'll start to feel, I think, the sense of urgency and panic. It's not just, I'm discontent here, it's Uranus energy, bitch. This is about, I can no longer stand this. I can no longer be in this friend group. I can no longer identify with this belief system because this is just making me feel like I'm choking, like I can't breathe, like I'm suffocating in this environment because my individuality is so suppressed. It's like it's trying to break my willpower. And it's not going to happen, guys. There's no way that the will can ever be broken. Our wild spirit can never fully be broken. It can be tamed, it can be suppressed, but it is always there. And so Uranus comes around in these beautiful cycles and transits to inform us that our wild spirit needs more expression. It needs more airtime. And so that's really what's coming alive here right now. So it's not about the boundaries anymore. It's not about the support and the safety that Saturn offers. That has now turned into abuse, regression, restriction, where we're not even questioning the way that we've done things. And this eclipse is coming to shake that up so we can start to question what we haven't questioned before, especially around ways in which we have told ourselves we can't do something, or the way that we've perceived something as being one type of way, when that's not actually a reality. It's just a belief system that we're so entrenched in that we don't even recognize that it's a belief system. We think that it's truth. And that's what this eclipse is going to help us see with the South Node in Scorpio. It's about the truth setting us free and about recognizing what that truth actually is. So this is going to be a really big one for us. And it can feel quite agitating. It can feel like, like we're a wild animal breaking out of a cage, and that can bring about a lot of fear because Saturn it's almost like this black hole of fear that in many ways tries to encompass us and hug us and tell us, this is your safety zone. This is the way that you're going to learn about life. And this is just one facet of Saturn. It's not all of its facets, but the one that's represented archetypally in this eclipse. And so what he's trying to do right now is hold us back. And so that black hole is going to really grow in terms of intensity and awareness in our lives as we start to move towards Uranus, as we start to break free, to break a pattern, to do something differently, to say no, to choose ourselves, to say fuck you to the group, to the beliefs, to that system, to the judgment. Saturn will come through because it is a square and it's going to give us criticism. It's going to appear as outside judgment, as I just mentioned. It's going to appear as our internal fears that we can't have the thing that we want. We can't do the thing that we want. It's going to feel like people or society has control over us. And it's going to feel like all of our insecurities are going to take over. And so it's our job at this eclipse to ground ourselves in our value, in our self-worth, which is a Moon in Taurus act. What do I truly value in my lifetime? How can I lean into this value system? And if I value myself, which I'm hoping that you do, and you represent yourself in this exercise, then it doesn't matter what everyone else is saying and thinking. What matters is what I think. What matters is what I say in my life. And so as we reorient ourselves to our value system, it's going to ground us and give us the stability that we need to move forward without as much fear, because we know that as long as we're acting according to our values, we're not doing anything wrong. We're just trying. And if things fail, if things don't go properly, that's life. But we are learning and failing forward. We're making mistakes to become better people. Nothing will be a waste, right? And so this upheaval and this change and this saying no and this disharmony, if it's really according to our soul values, is only going to set us free, even if it's imperfect. And so I feel like I'm almost getting emotional. I don't know why. I just feel like it's just such an important time for a lot of us. And I don't even know what this relates to in your own life. We'll get into all the rising signs, but it just feels very, very important. Because this square with Saturn is something that, like I said, we've dealt with since February of last year. So it can be helpful to actually go back. February 17th, 2021, what did I feel? June 14th, 2021, what did I experience? And December 24th, 2021, that was our last wrap up of this exact square. And this was when we were really in the throes of, who am I meant to be? I want to push forward. There's so many societal restrictions. I don't know how it's going to work. This year is about moving away from that. This aspect is really starting to shift. It's starting to separate. It's not as strong anymore. It's not as big of a deal. It won't be exact ever again this year. So, really the fact that it's coming up so strongly in an eclipse is almost like revisiting a past issue and making sure that we have closure on it, making sure that we see something through and that we're like, no, I'm not doing this. I've done this all last year. I've listened to this little voice in my head, or I haven't followed this thing that I wanted to do. I haven't lived according to this value, or I've succumbed to this way of being, and I'm not doing that anymore. I'm actually going to make this change, and this eclipse is where we make the change. And mind you, eclipse energy does last for 6 months, so you will really start to see the whole thing manifest over the next half of the year. But we usually get this kind of jolt of energy or experience on the day of the eclipse or around the eclipse as well. So really be kind of tuning into what it is that needs changing in our lives. And again, really great time to sit with yourself and write out what you value and any area of your life where you feel like there is a misalignment to that value system. Because I think that's where it's going to become very clear that you have given up your sovereignty to comply and to live within a padded cell of structure and safety, but it is a padded cell that has trapped you. And so this is on a societal and personal level. Wherever we give up our freedom for safety, things go to absolute chaos. We have to have a measure of both. And so this is our realignment as a society because we have had too much safety and not enough freedom and individuality, again, on a cultural, societal level and on an extremely internal, individual level. These are archetypes that exist within us. So if you think I'm just talking about the world, you are so wrong. This is on a very personal level. So look within your life, look within your relationships, and start to uncover where you have tolerated that padded cell for far too long. So what else is happening at this eclipse? We also have Venus making a trine to Neptune. So this is really beautiful to me because I've said so much about learning how to kind of sift through our value systems and align with those. And I think Venus making a trine to Neptune is going to help us reach for this higher ideal. And Neptune is also about sacrifice. And as I mentioned, Venus is about harmony, getting along. And because it's on the South Node, because it's in the sign of Scorpio, there may be ways in which we have to sacrifice harmony, sacrifice peace in order to create our higher ideal. And I think this Neptune trine Venus is actually saying there is a willingness here to do that. There is a desire here for both of these planets within us to say, yeah, I'm willing to put this on the bed of my sacrifice to get what I really want here. And there may be also some degree of just surrendering to that process. It's like less about trying to control the outcome because Neptune has just a higher connection, a higher mind that is able to allow things to come as they are because it's more aware of almost the afterlife and our souls. And it's less trying to dictate the day-to-day because it understands how this is a small piece of a larger picture. We also have Mars making a square to Neptune. So this is where things might get a little bit complicated because while there are aspects where we are willing to sacrifice for our higher ideals, Mars in Gemini is still very analytical. It's still very much trying to figure everything out. And sometimes there are aspects of this that are not figure outable. There are aspects of this that we don't understand how making these certain decisions is going to lead to a certain outcome. It's almost like we can't really see the outcome. We don't maybe even know necessarily how to go about this decision. Mars is a lot about our action. And with this square to Neptune, it's like we're very willing with that Venus trine to Neptune. We're very willing to make these adjustments. But when it comes to the actual application of them and like understanding how to go about it, with Mars and Gemini being super logical, but then also being retrograde and square Neptune, it's like our decision faculty is a little bit confused. So there's part of us that's like, okay, I do want to do this. I know I want to do this. This is for my better good, my highest good, but I actually have no idea how I'm going to tell this person this, or what that actually means, or what the deadline should be for this, or what the outcome is going to be as a result of this. I don't know what's going to take its place. I'm kind of confused about how to go about this in every possible manner. And so we might kind of have that feeling, and that's okay. I don't think that this eclipse is about control. This eclipse is about letting the fuck go. If you've been holding on to something in any capacity, holding on to a thought about somebody that you need to tell them, holding on to a relationship that's been dying, holding on to an aspect of your personality in any kind of way that's just long overdue to be let go, it's like finally releasing the clench, if you know what I'm talking about, and letting it all out. And so I think a lot about this process is kind of just going with the flow and trusting the intuition that comes through, and each step along the way, not trying to have it a plan, just letting it flow. Mars is also trining Saturn, which is 6 degrees and applying. So this will be exact towards the end of the month. So I think that a lot of the lack of clarity that happens around this time will clear up at the end of the month. With Mars trining Saturn, it really feels like there's a solidity taking place, a resolution and an understanding taking place that will last into the future. So we have something to kind of grasp onto and say, okay, yeah, at least like I know this one thing, and you can move along. Mars is also squaring Jupiter, but it's kind of moving away. So there may be ways with Mars squaring Jupiter where we were kind of feeling like maybe it's not as bad, or maybe we can make it work, or maybe we were also over optimistic about just how things would work out. And maybe this time it's about getting a little bit more serious with the square Saturn, that sometimes things just have to be let go of. We have to face them. Again, that's not super applicable because it's already separating by this eclipse, so I didn't want to go super into that. But what is applicable is this Jupiter sextile Pluto, 2 degrees and applying. This is so exciting to me. I don't know why I just like latched onto this aspect and I was like, this is it. And I do this a lot in readings. When I see somebody's chart, I'm like, whew, I hone in on something very intuitively that this is very significant for their personality or their current chapter in life. And that is how I feel about Jupiter sextile Pluto, because this whole eclipse is happening along the south node in Scorpio, which is Plutonian ruled in our modern times. So the fact that Jupiter, this god, the Zeus, the king of the zodiac, the person that is, or the archetype that is here to really lead us in our lives to the highest possible version of ourselves, the most expansive, growth-oriented, positive version of ourselves, is in a positive aspect with the god of the underworld that is responsible for all the death and destruction within our lives right now, where the South Node is already representing this. It's like loss and loss and loss. That's why lots of Scorpios have had to let go of a lot of things, internal and external, this year, because when the South Node is in your sign, that's the experience you have. So the South Node being in Scorpio and Pluto being the ruler of that South Node, and it all representing death and destruction, letting go. The fact that these archetypes are coming together, this growth and this release, is indicating to me that whatever you decide to shed now, whatever you decide to let go of, you're almost going to get like instant results, instant satisfaction. And that might not be the case with a square to Saturn, which tends to maybe take a little bit more time. But usually eclipses and also Uranus energy will give you instant results. Regardless, the instant result could be internal, where there's this feeling of, I just made the right decision. I have no idea what the outcome is. I have no idea how anything is going to turn out, but I feel in my heart that this is 100% right. And I had this actually with an ex-boyfriend. When we broke up, I was so devastated. And I remember I decided to move to Colorado, which is where I have a house now. And I was driving out there and I was like, it was really sudden, honestly. It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out for months in advance. Like, it was super one day to the next. We decided mutually to break up. And I remember driving in the car, kind of scared shitless, excited, super sad, very much processing my feelings. But I had this sense of relief also. I was so sad to be leaving him behind and this whole life behind. but I also knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do. And I'm sure you guys have all had those experiences where there's something in your heart where you're like, this was absolutely the right thing to do. And I think that's what we're all going to experience with this Jupiter sextile Pluto. We're going to feel this almost instant relief. And I wouldn't be surprised if many of us also experienced huge change arounds in our life as a result of this, where we did sacrifice something on the altar of our future self. And as a result, within the next couple weeks, we found a new friend group, a new boyfriend, a new job, something else that fills its place in a way that is going to inspire us, that's going to expand us, that's going to challenge us, that's going to help us feel like that maverick and rebel inside of us has so much more room to run around and bounce up against the walls in this brand new large kind of container. And I think that we won't regret a single thing. So even if it's uncomfortable, I definitely think it is worth it. So that is the rundown of this eclipse. Now I'm going to get into it for each rising sign. Before I do, though, I wanted to mention that this Saturday I have my Mars workshop where we're going over the archetype of Mars and how to best embody it. So this is the warrior archetype that each of us has. We all have our each individual unique flavor of it. And so we're going to discover what that flavor is for you. And again, how to bring it to life a little bit more in a healthy way if it's suppressed, or how to kind of balance it out if it's a little bit overexpressed in your chart. We're going to go over all of that. It's very psychological, very almost like emotional. It's not just a learning lesson. I've never done anything like this before, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. I'll leave the link for that in the description box below. And now let's go ahead and jump into all of the rising and sun signs. All right, up first we have my beautiful Aries rising. For you guys, this Taurus lunar eclipse full moon is happening along your 8th and 12th house, 8th and 2nd house axis. So the moon, the Taurus energy, is in the 2nd house, and the sun is in the 8th with Mercury and Venus. And the moon is next to Uranus in the north node. So this is going to be a highly emotional moon for you guys, given the fact that it's happening in the 8th and the 2nd house. And I feel like what's happening is almost like you guys with the sun here and the south node and Venus and Mercury are becoming very psychically sensitive. I'm almost getting like you're, how to explain this? Like, you know, okay, let me use an example of my boyfriend. So something that happened with my boyfriend is he would work outside all day in the cold, and then he would come home and he would be very sensitive to temperature. And so I feel like there's something going on in your lives where there has been a lot going on, and this could have to do with things that you are ingesting. So this could have to do with, I mean, it could be foods and impurities along those lines, but I think it's more mental and physical, or mental and emotional. So this could be, hanging out with certain types of friends or consuming certain information, and it really starting to kind of eat away at your membrane, your psychic membrane, and infiltrate you. And this could be you spending lots of time on social media, or lots of time with certain people, or doing certain drugs, or whatever it could be, that you are slowly kind of chipping away at the surface of you that is there to protect you, that is there to keep you sane and stable and balanced and feeling good. And so many of you might be going through an experience where you're feeling hypersensitive, like to the cold, but to emotional things, or even external influences. There's something in your life where you're just becoming like you're feeling everything. Like there isn't this layer between you to protect you as easily as before. And what I'm seeing with Moon and Uranus in the North Node, the 2nd house, opposing this, is that there may be ways in which you are being asked to protect yourself. And this is likely through some type of boundaries. And I pulled the Harmony card, which has to do with these kind of balance and everything like that. But I think maybe you guys, because this is squaring Saturn in the 11th house, many of you guys might have sacrificed certain things for the sake of harmony in a group, harmony in your environment, harmony amongst certain types of people in your life that you see as almost like a unit. And so this is saying that you are meant to now firm up your boundaries and have more of a membrane, a cell membrane, more of a layer of protection. Because I actually feel like there are ways in which you have disowned your boundaries that you have been using almost like a coping mechanism. Like, oh, I can't do that because of such and such. You know, it's like blaming other people or using something as an excuse, or just something where you kind of folding into maybe others' expectations is actually resulting in you letting yourself down, but you're also letting yourself off the hook. You're also making it okay when it's not okay. And you have this kind of scapegoat excuse because it's somebody else outside of you. But this eclipse in the second house is saying, no, this is your self. This is your self-preservation. This is your needs. These are your desires. And how do we honor that over what other people want from us, or over what the group is doing, or over these other things that are happening? And I think because you've been maybe compliant or around this kind of environment for a while, that is what I think has rubbed down your psychic membrane to make you more emotional, more sensitive, and honestly more prone to other people kind of leeching or latching onto you and taking advantage of that. People can feel when you are weak, and when you are constantly giving into, you know, what other people want from you or what's best for the group, and you're not really honoring your own individuality and your own needs and setting important boundaries, this will go out and transmit into the universe, and you will attract people like that who will take advantage of you. You will attract more of the same. And so I think that many of you guys have a twofold lesson going on here. I think the first lesson is to almost like have some time by yourself, set those boundaries, have some time by yourself with a sanctuary card where you're in your own energy. You can kind of build up that membrane again. You can protect yourself more. You can continue to say no and set boundaries to insulate yourself physically and emotionally. And then I think the second big lesson here is around humility and knowing when to take ownership over something. And that's what I think this card is really saying, where it's your fault that your boundaries have been crossed because you allowed it to be crossed. Unless someone obviously like physically forces you, that's a whole other thing. But like generally, people are trampling our boundaries because they sense that weakness within us where we're not going to stand up for ourselves. And the square with Saturn is saying there may be some fear and insecurity around not belonging, where you haven't been willing to face the possibility of rejection and say no. And now is your time to honor that, to honor your emotions, to honor your intuition, and to say no when necessary in a loving and compassionate way with the Queen of Cups. It doesn't have to be in this like hard ass Saturn kind of way. It's like, no, I'm going to do what is right for me. And what is right for me is ultimately going to be right for you too. And so I think that is the lesson here for you guys. Let's take a look at the other aspects of this eclipse. You have Venus in the 8th, trining Neptune in the 12th. I think that this is going to make you really aware of that sensitivity and in specific in regards to relationships and where you may have been fueled by insecurities, fueled by fears of things that maybe have happened in the past, or fear of rejection in general. Mars is in your third house, retrograde, squaring Neptune in the 12th. So there may be some ways in which you're not entirely sure how you want to communicate this, how you want to go about making this decision. You might feel like part of you wants to do like a hard cutoff and you're confident in that and you're like, no, I'm going to say no. And then maybe there's another part of you that's like, actually, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I feel confident for that. And so it's going to be about, I think, building up the confidence in time, especially because towards the end of the month, Mars will trine Saturn in the 11th. I think you'll kind of firm up your boundaries and your rigidity and be able to kind of actualize some of these desires instead of be waffling back and forth in uncertainty and lack of confidence. Lastly, you guys have Jupiter in retrograde in Pisces in the 12th house, sextiling Pluto in the 10th. So this process of going within, this sanctuary process, which is very much Jupiter in the 12th, is actually like the saying no and spending more time with yourself, which actually is probably the case for a lot of what you need right now. Jupiter moving through the 12th house is a lot about that. Like, you're going to grow by having time alone. So that might actually be what you've been needing for a while, but you've been almost like refusing to acknowledge. And now that Jupiter is retrograded back into Pisces and back into your 12th house, there may be this realization of, oh, I still need to go within. And then once it goes direct and back into your first house, things will be different. But there's this larger process of you guys needing to go within. And with the sextile to Pluto in the 10th, it's saying that you actually are going to have massive growth in the areas of life that you're excited about. So like your goals that you've set for yourself, feeling more empowered, feeling more in control of your life and looked up to and just powerful in general. You're going to achieve that by having this time alone. And if you don't set those boundaries, you're not going to get what you're looking for. And so this is a very pivotal kind of change. It might seem like, oh, it's so small, like spend time alone, say no to people. It's like, no, this is a massive evolutionary process where once you make those adjustments, you will then grow exponentially as a result of this inner processing. So that's what I'm saying for you, Aries Rising. I am doing a workshop this weekend on Mars, and that is actually your ruling planet, so I highly recommend checking it out. We're going to discover the archetype of our warrior within us, as well as how to best embody it. So definitely check that out using the link down below. This is a workshop unlike anything I've ever done before, where we're actually going to kind of take you through this whole journey of discovering your, not only your archetype of the warrior within you, but how balanced it is. Is it healthy? Like, are you over or under expressing it? And how to work with that, how to heal that if there are kind of imbalances there. So definitely check that out. I hope to see you guys there, and I hope you have a great day. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Taurus rising. This Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your first house with Uranus and the North Node there. So you guys already have been super familiar with this energy. You have been transforming as individuals tremendously. And I think that this eclipse is going to give you an extra jolt of energy in this process of transformation, in which you are able to finally liberate yourself or have some kind of unexpected change or unexpected breakthrough, or something where you're pushing past a limitation and a standard that you might have actually had for yourself that was keeping you limited. The moon is opposite the sun, the south node, Mercury, and Venus, all in the sign of Scorpio in your 7th house of relationships. So a lot of this has to deal with maybe actually bringing up relationship topics in particular. And I do think for many of us, it could be about letting go of certain ways of being within a relationship that is actually going to open you up for more love in your life. And I don't think that this is going to mean a new relationship for everybody, but for many of you, it could signify that. And at the very least, it could open you up to new love within yourself and your relationship with yourself. It could open you up to more magnetism, more aliveness, more juiciness, more creativity. And I really see that with the Knight of Cups. It's like I see you taking yourself on a date. I see you romancing yourself and feeling like you have more of this zest and passion for life and excitement, because you're not so, how do I say this? Like, Taurus is very practical. Taurus is an earth sign, and this eclipse in particular is squaring Saturn in the 10th house. Saturn is a very kind of authoritative figure. The 10th house is also authoritative, where there are expectations and rules and career obligations and having to be responsible all the time and be, respectable and have duty and da. And so I think there are many ways in which your Taurus energy can grab onto that Saturnian energy in the 10th house and ride its coattails for longer than you need. You know, I'm going to be the responsible one. I'm going to work super hard. I'm not going to give myself a break. I'm going to put money first because we're going into a recession and da 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 da. Generally, what I'm seeing here is that there can be a rejection of the self, where in some ways with Uranus moving through the first, you've also been on this journey of, I want to achieve this success with Saturn in my 10th. I want to make a name for myself. I want to do something worthwhile and notable and push myself to achieve something. And I also have this part of me that wants to be free, that wants to not have a schedule, that wants to wake up and go to the park because it's a sunny day outside, and rebel and say no to the boss who gave me 3 extra tasks, or to my own inner boss, which is constantly reprimanding me and telling me to do more and more and more for a sense of security. And so there's been this kind of fight between yourself the last year, especially in 2021, where you may have felt these conflicting urges of, I want authenticity, freedom, individuality, excitement, change. And then this other part of you that's, I want consistency, I want stability, I want something for my future, I want to build something, I want to control something. And these parts of you have been at odds, as I mentioned. And so this eclipse is bringing this to the surface, because I think for many of us, we have overindulged in the Saturnian, strict, rigid, disciplined part of ourselves and have neglected the Uranian part of ourselves, which is why the universe has a balancing effect through the stars, through time, where things always have to come in ebbs and flows and rebalance themselves. And so because of this, you are being activated at this eclipse into your Uranian energy of rebelliousness and excitement. And that's why I see the Knight of Cups, which is all about this kind of creativity and passion and following your dreams, following the, you know, the second brain down there, all those kinds of things. Like, I am very excited physically, mentally, emotionally by this person. And I'm just gonna, you know, take a break from work, or I'm just gonna do things that I've never done before. I'm gonna ask somebody out. I'm gonna, you know, whatever. Or maybe there's been a part of your existing relationship where you've really kind of gotten into the practical side of things, that it's coming to bring more life into it. Or even the relationship with yourself, which I think is the most important one here. It might not be the most outwardly noticeable, but it's the thing that you're going to feel the most every single day. And so that relationship is really about, again, honoring this side of you that needs more expression, that needs more self-love, more, again, authentic outlets. So it's like, I have this side of myself, and I want to be a musician, and I have this day job. And so I'm working so hard on my day job, and I'm building up so much responsibility that I don't even take time after work to work on my music. And it's like, you're neglecting this whole creative, passionate side of yourself that needs to be honored. And so that's what I'm seeing at this eclipse with this beloved card. Many of you guys in your relationships with yourself are going to start honoring these individual needs, are going to start maybe going after creative pursuits, doing the things that you've always wanted to do that you told yourself you don't have time for, you have too many responsibilities that you can't do, that there are too many obligations and other things in your life that are more important. No, I'm seeing you guys say, I have to make time for this. And of course, you're always going to make time for your work as well. But I'm seeing you reprioritizing things in your life to put yourself first, and this feeling of having a life. You're not just working, right? You have something for yourself, like you're living for yourself here. And that, I think, may, for some of you, manifest as a relationship coming your way because of all this Knight of Cups, the beloved. These are kind of the romance cards of the deck, and they are absolutely indicating that there is a potential here for a partner to come through, or a revitalization of your existing partnership. Again, more creativity, more sexual passion, more excitement and newness, and that relationship with yourself as well. So all 3 of those apply. And I also pulled the healing card. So I think there's just a lot of inner healing happening where you realize that, first of all, it's okay to rest if you need to rest. Although I don't necessarily feel like this is a lot about resting, because you guys have Uranus in your first house. Like, it's a lot of excitement. But sometimes before the excitement, we need to recalibrate a little bit and rest and integrate and heal and all those things. But I think for many of you, you're going to heal through doing new exciting stuff and realizing that, again, there's more to life than the responsibilities that you've set yourself, or you set your focus on. You guys also have Venus in the 7th making a trine to Neptune in the 11th. So this is really beautiful. I think you're going to get a lot of support from your relationships in regards to the pursuit of these visions. I think that many of you guys will see that if there is something new and exciting you wanted to do, you can do it with a partner. Although lunar eclipses are usually about some kind of ending, I think for many of you, because the North Node is in your first house, you're really gaining something out of this experience. Like, you're ending the way that you view and did things, but you're gaining a new relationship with yourself, new activities, and new support that you maybe haven't even noticed before. You guys also have Mars in the 2nd in Gemini retrograde, squaring Neptune in the 11th. So let me pull a card for this one. I was going to say, I feel like there may be ways in which I do feel like you're getting a lot of support from your community, even though the South Node of Venus is all of that is in the 2nd house. But I think yeah, okay. Okay, this is very clear. 2 of Swords, 8 of Pentacles, 7 of Cups. You guys are having a lot of choices to make, and I think it's kind of confusing because the 11th house is our house of our future. What are we doing next? What's our path? Like, what's our plan? So the 2 of Swords is indecision, not knowing which path to choose. 8 of Pentacles is building up our skills, and the 7 of Cups is having lots of choices. So you may have things, like, you may have a lot of different things that you want to do, actually, especially because this is Mars in the Gemini in the 2nd house, and Mars in Gemini, and especially Mars in 2nd house, is all about us acquiring and building skill sets so that we can then transform them into something that feels like an asset to us, that is either monetary or some kind of value that we put on ourselves that we take into relationships, and so on and so forth. And that square to Neptune 11th is saying, oh my God, I don't know what to do first. There's so many classes I want to take. There's so many new hobbies I want to start. There's so many new people I want to talk to. And so this is a good problem to have, but it is a problem nonetheless. So I think that you will find towards the end of the month with Mars squaring Saturn in the 10th that you will find a kind of decision. You'll finalize, you'll be like, okay, this is what I think I want to do. Or you kind of dabble in different things, and then it becomes a little bit clearer or more solid at the end of the month that, yeah, for sure, this is what I want. That's kind of how I'm envisioning this unfold. Lastly, you guys have Jupiter in retrograde in Pisces in 11th, sextiling Pluto in the 9th. This is so good for you guys to feel like the things that you are growing into, that you're working towards in your future, are actually going to contribute to you feeling like you can completely shift your perspective about life. So it's not like I'm just going to take up knitting and it's going to be fun and It's having this really deeper process happening for you guys where you will then see that the amount of relaxation and creativity that feels inspired at that time is going to bring about almost like a new version of you, a new personality, a new belief about what you want in life or what life is really about. And I think it's going to connect you to more of your why, so that when you do go into your work, you will feel so much more purposeful and revitalized. So that's what I'm seeing for you, Taurus. Before you go, I wanted to mention I have a workshop happening this weekend for Mars, which is all about the archetype of the warrior within ourselves. So we're going to examine this archetype within your chart, as well as how to best embody it. So what is that kind of nuance and special sauce that your warrior personally carries based off of your chart? And is it really healthily expressed, or is it overexpressed or underexpressed? And if that's the case, we were going to go into special tactics to learn how to balance that, and also just how to get in tune with this side of yourself, which I'm very excited about. So definitely check that out in the link in the description box down below, and I hope you have a great day. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Gemini Rising. So for you guys, this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 12th house, and that means the sun, the South Node, Mercury, Venus, all in Scorpio are in your 6th house right now. Heavy focus on your health, heavy focus on your work, your routines, your flow. And also the moon, Uranus, and the North Node are all in your 12th house of release and surrender. And that's a lot of what I'm seeing here. So I have a lot to say. And also this eclipse, very importantly, is making a square to Saturn in your 9th house of faith. And it's funny because I pulled the trust card and the strength card, which has a lot to do with having courage and faith. And so what I'm seeing for you guys is that there actually needs to be a release of control here. So the sun, Mercury, Venus, all this happening in the 6th house is where we tend to create structure in our lives, where we tend to feel like, okay, I have a routine, I have order to the way I do things, I have a plan, I'm working within a system, I'm showing up and either somebody else is telling me what to do or I'm setting this for myself, and I know kind of where I go every day and what I do every day and how I take care of things in my life. And with the South Node here, there is a way in which you've been going about this that has not been working. And so there's something up with your job, the way that you handle your health, the way that you handle your routine, your organization, your structure, your planning, all of those things that concretize your day. There is something that is misaligned, that feels like it's not actually authentic for you, that feels like I should show up and do this. I should blah, 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 blah. And with the square with Saturn in the 9th, there is an existing belief system that you are needing to completely revitalize. There is a belief that you are supposed to be a certain way, or you're supposed to do things a certain way. And it's just, girl, it's not serving you. Actually, 30% of you are males. So guy, also to you too. But there is something about this where you've should all over yourself and you set these really almost like unrealistic expectations, and they're unrealistic because they're not authentic to you. So it's like, okay, I'm supposed to do this and I'm going to beat myself until I do it. And then I can't keep consistent with it because I'm a Gemini. If you can't tell, this is me, I can't keep it consistent because I'm a mutable double-bodied sign and I struggle with that anyway. But you know what? Geminis can be consistent with things that light us up and that feel like they are using all of our skills and talents and they're stimulating us and causing us to grow and challenging us. And there has been something really rigid about the way that you've structured your life based off of this belief system that you have to control everything, that you have to meet this standard and you have to manipulate your day or do these certain things or you're not going to have success. And this eclipse happening in the 12th house with this Uranus energy is liberating you to just surrender, to just give up some control. And I'm just like, I'm getting teary-eyed because this is so me. And to just trust that actually if your entire plan and all this stuff that you have going on isn't exactly the way that it turns out. Like if it doesn't unfold in the way that you're expecting, it's actually great. The universe has got you. The universe already has a way better plan than you do. And I think what's happening is it's going to shake you to your core so much that I think in many ways you're almost going to shed an entirely old version of yourself and step into a kind of scary new version of yourself where you're going to have to edit your belief system to encapsulate the idea that the more that I trust and have courage in the unknown and believe that I'll be supported anyway and not try to control all the outcome but allow things to unfold over time, the more that I do that, things actually pick up. Things actually move better. Things actually move easier. I'm not resisting the flow of life and energy. I'm allowing it to be spoken and move through me. And I think about the story of so many YouTubers that I follow. And they're like, yeah, I started off reading tarot for fun. And I thought I was going to do this whole music career, this whole psychology degree or whatever it is. And I saw this picked up and just blew up. And I never, intended for it to be like this. But that's like when the universe recognized within them that they had this special skill and this special sauce, this little nugget of wisdom that other people needed. And it was so healing for people. And it was like something clicked into place within the universe that this is absolutely what was meant for you and your destiny, that you were meant to help people in this way. And if you tried to control the outcome and dictate, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to do music, and you just didn't do it like a hobby or whatever, then you would have missed out on this whole beautiful gift that your life was here to deliver to the world. And that is what I'm seeing for you, Gemini. I feel like there's a complete upheaval of the belief system where you're now learning to have faith and surrender to allow your purpose and allow your day and your everything to just, and your plan to just like unfold and flow naturally. And I think it's going to be so much more authentic with this card here, this authenticity card. And this moon is conjunct Uranus in the 12th house. So there is this feeling that this is actually going to be the best expression of who you are. You thought you knew you, but God knew you better. And that's, I think, the quote for this. And so that's really what's coming. And I pulled the Knight of Swords, the Strength, and the Eight of Wands. And you guys, you have so much forward movement. You have Mars in your sign. Yes, it is retrograde now, so it's a little bit different. But you have so much forward movement and things progressing so easily. It feels like air, you know? It feels like when you have a helmet that's like built like a little cone, and you're just, you can just shoot through the air. You can shoot through the water. There's no resistance. It moves so quickly because the surface area is designed for this atmosphere, and the universe is designing you for the right role. And if you can just release the resistance, you'll move so much faster. And the Strength card to me is really saying that I feel like you guys are going to have to confront your own fears. I think it's actually going to feel like an existential crisis. It's actually going to feel like a death of the self. Like this line is attacking her. Like she's literally feeling like, I'm going to die, but she's not. You know, she's captured in this moment in time. But if you fast forward, she learns how to tame her wild self, her insecurities, her uncertainties, her fears that have manifested as her controlling things. And so it can literally feel like an ego death when the ego is no longer in the seat, when it doesn't dictate how things are going to go, when you don't have a sense of control and you have to surrender. It's like, now what do I do? The ego almost needs to be redirected or healed in some way, because it could feel so scary to just move into this kind of spaciousness and this liminal space. We're not exerting effort. I mean, imagine walking every day of your life and then all of a sudden you're walking on the moon. The amount of no effort and also like the lack of gravity and control that you have could feel scary if you're not prepared for that. If it's your first time doing it ever, you don't have the same kind of like level of control. But yet it's so much easier. You can literally fly. But it can feel existential. So many of you guys might be going through that, and the square to Saturn in the ninth, you're giving up control of a certain belief system or belief system around control that I think with time and effort, you will slowly kind of shape into something that you feel confident with. But right now, or at first, it will feel probably a little bit scary, because that's what the 12th house can feel like. You also have Venus in the 6th house trining Neptune in the 10th. So I think that you'll start to see that the flow actually feels really good in your day-to-day life. Like your health improves. You'll feel that your intuition tells you what to work on in the moment, or how long to spend on something, or how much to dedicate to something. I think you'll start to feel like the flow actually really works. But your Mars in the 1st house is squaring the Neptune in the 10th house. So there is this kind of iteration process happening. Mars is also retrograde, where you're having to rediscover how to use your willpower in this new and distinct way. So no longer am I just like forcing myself, no longer am I just pushing past my area of like desire, you know, not just like whipping myself into doing something. I have to now navigate what it's like to use will but still flow. And that is a process. And that's why this is a square. You're going to be confused about how to do this. You're not going to just know how to do it right out of the box. And Mars is retrograde in your sign until March of 2023. So you have plenty of time to discover this about yourself and to reorient this relationship with your own willpower, your own desires. And your desires might really shift during this period of time as well. And again, it could feel quite existential and like scary, but also exciting. And so I think you guys are going to like it. At the end of the month, Mars is trining Saturn in the ninth. So I think that's when you'll start to solidify a little bit better how you want to go about this. Because at first you might be like totally lost and kind of reverting back to old ways. But this trine with Saturn in the ninth, I think, will help solidify and help you get a clear understanding of a little bit how to do this. And then I think it will feel a lot more natural once Mars goes direct in March, and even more so once Mars actually passes where it was to begin with at the start of its retrograde. I think that's when you'll feel like a full completion of knowing how to manage both flow and effort, will and desire, and the universe's will and desire and surrender. And again, I don't know exactly when that is. I have to look it up, but it should be at least like, it's going to be many, many months from now. So it's going to be sometime next year. And then lastly, you have Jupiter retrograde in Pisces in the 10th house, sextiling Pluto in the 8th. So I think that this ultimately is going to help you guys transcend yourself within your career. I think that you're going to achieve so many more things because as you start to loosen up your control, you're going to be less driven by fear, less driven by insecurities, less driven by lack. And you're going to start being driven by inspiration, which is what Jupiter and Pisces is. And that this is the highest octave or the highest like wavelength of energy. What is the word for that? Like hertz or, oh my God, I'm totally blanking. The frequency, my God, it's the highest frequency, right? This inspiration versus fear and lack and scarcity. So all of those things have been driving you, and now you're switching gears. And now that you're switching gears with Jupiter sextiling Pluto in the 8th, you're going to find that you are much more powerful, that your punch has a much harder swing to it, that what you say means something a lot more, that basically everything in your life just has more meaning to it. And it's because it's backed by what the universe actually wants from you. And so that is what I'm saying for you, Gemini. Before you go, definitely check out my workshop, which is happening this Saturday. It will be recorded if you can't attend live, where we're going over our relationship with Mars and our willpower. It is the archetype of our inner warrior. So this is actually very, very important and relevant for you because Mars is going through your sign for so long. So you guys definitely will want to check that out. You know what? I think I mentioned that Mars is retrograde until March, but Mars might be in Gemini until March. I don't know. I need to check. So maybe I'll put that in like the notes or something because I feel like I'm starting to doubt myself. But regardless, I'm going to do a workshop on the archetype of the warrior within us based off of our own charts. So we're going to start to learn how to best embody our inner warrior, how to work with it and balance it out if it's become a little bit over intense or suppressed. And we're going to look at that in our charts. So definitely check that out. And I hope to see you guys there. Thanks. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Cancer risings. So this might be a big one for you because a lot of cards started spitting themselves out. And even though this isn't happening in an angular house, I still think it's going to be something that you'll really feel because of the kinds of cards that are coming out. So this Taurus lunar eclipse, which is a full moon, is happening in your 11th house. So the moon in Taurus is conjunct Uranus in the North Node in your 11th house of friendships. And the Sun, Mercury, Venus, South Node, and Scorpio is in your 5th house of your self-expression and what you need to do for you, baby boo. So, and it's squaring Saturn in the 8th, which is the big thing here. So first of all, I feel like you guys are going to go through some kind of revolution and change in the area of your friendships. I think that you might find that your community is shifting, your group, or the way that you even identify within a community is going to shift a lot. And I think that this is because of some divine redirection and protection with this card here. I don't think that your current environment is hospitable to your most unique expression of yourself. And I think actually that there are going to be ways in which you become a lot more fulfilled emotionally and a lot more passionate and in line and like aligned in terms of actions with your passions, and also kind of in control of your destiny or your emotions and your excitement. I think all of those things are going to become enhanced, to become better as a result of making some shockwaves and shifts in your current system that you're a part of, especially in terms of relationships. So like maybe this doesn't just have to be with friends, because the 11th house can represent more than that. I think it also, if I'm not incorrect, I think it represents like step parents. So there could be like different types of relationships that it's talking about, but there's some kind of part of your life where you are belonging to something, or you're in a dynamic that isn't the best suited to you. And actually, in order to achieve actual harmony in your life, actual balance, actual equilibrium, there needs to be some kind of shift. And I pulled this revival card, which feels like the true harmony hasn't been there. And so it's like reviving it from the dead. And that's actually what the 11th house is about. It's about this feeling of belonging. But what's funny is that Uranus is about individuation. So there's this is straddling between, can I be myself, completely my individual self, without being told how to behave or what to do, what to be like, and still feel like I belong, and still feel like I'm a part of this community, and still feel like I'm loved and accepted for who I am. And that is the question. And there are many ways in which your current atmosphere is not suitable for that. And so you are going to have to undergo some changes. And it's squaring Saturn in the 8th house. So there may be ways in which you have resisted these changes, even though there might have actually been signs that appeared earlier for you that you need new friends, that you need to go out and meet new people, or whatever it is exactly. There may be some internal resistance to those signs from the universe out of fear, because Saturn in the 8th house is where we fear new situations, new people, being vulnerable, opening up, sharing our insecurities. We fear that maybe certain people will take advantage of us if we do that, or we fear like we're just going to repeat past patterns, or there's so many things that can come up. But there's generally a sense of I'm unsafe. And as a result of being unsafe, I'm going to go into super Saturnian mode and protect myself by not investing into this relationship, by not investing into these communities, by staying where I'm at, by staying where I've always been, by being safe. And this moon and Uranus in the 11th house with the North Node is saying, time for newness, time for growth, time to be around people that push you outside of your comfort zone so that you can actually feel very aligned and fulfilled. Because again, I feel like there are ways in which you may have been almost like sacrificing yourself in your own interests in order to fit in. Or if that's not the case, there may have just been a general neglect of certain parts of yourself, or it's been at the expense of one or the other. Like, I don't feel like I belong, and I've been investing in myself and I do my own thing, but I don't really have the friend group that I want. Or the opposite of, I've been really wanting to belong, and so as a result, I've sacrificed my interests and my individuality. And you could fall anywhere along that spectrum, but there has been something where you have unnecessarily given away your power to fit into a dynamic that's not worth your time and energy and effort. That's not reflecting who you were meant to be. And so I think that you guys are going to have the potential now to manifest what you're actually looking for with this Magician card. If this feels like at first an upset, what comes out of this is going to be like a blank canvas where you can then paint the life that you want. So it might feel like an initial disturbance, and it ultimately is going to lend itself to create exactly the medicine that you needed. And that's what I'm seeing for everyone with this eclipse. I do want to look up this revival card to see specifically what it says, and then I'll get into the rest of the astrology happening here. So this is Cordyceps. This is actually, what deck is this? I do not remember. But I just got it and it's super fun. So if you're interested in like plants and astrology, this deck will be really awesome for you. If you want to know what it is, let me know in the description box. Okay. Or in the comment box. This is about energy, renewal, soaring to new heights, opportunity, activation, resurrection. And the guidance is it's time to soar to new heights. Energy is available to manifest your greatest dreams. Passion in alignment with knowledge. Energy is in alignment with matter. Like great eagle, you are blessed with the connection to the divine. You have inner ability to live in the realm of spirit, yet remain connected and balanced with the realms of earth. From the height of the clouds, where the great spirit dwells, the great eagle mirrors your ability to observe with expansive awareness and achieve great sight beyond the mundane. Eagle and cordyceps represent the courage to channel the higher mind, ether, in the realm of illumination and higher consciousness. If you've been walking in the shadows, which I feel like you have been in your current environment and maybe your current friend group, or lack of friend group, if you've been walking in the shadows, you're being asked to reconnect with the element of ether, the divine, and your higher mind. Heal your broken wings with love and seek a higher ground to observe the greatness of what you're made of. And this is what I feel like is happening. You have so much more potential than your current environment allows. And it's not until you're pushed out of the nest that you'll see that you have wings that could fly the whole entire time. And so I think many of you guys will find this, that you have either not taken the risk to create the friends that you need and the connections that you need, or you've become stagnant and comfortable in a certain community that's not in your best interest. Or if this is related to future goals, maybe you guys have also been really working hard towards something that is way too easy for you, or way too like not you, if that makes sense. And if you've been feeling like, gosh, I can't just get the right job or make the money I want, it's a protection, because you have so many more skills that you're not actually investing in, that are where you are meant to put your energy. You are meant to soar higher. And I think this is asking you to dream bigger, look at the bigger picture, zoom out, and don't get caught on the little things in between. You have Venus in the 5th, trining Neptune in the 9th. This embodies the energy perfectly. This is our divine inspiration. Feeling like, this is my creative idea. I want to flow into this. I know I can do this. I'm going to honor my own authenticity this way and not be held back. And I think that's like the highest ideal and the highest version of yourself. But you also have Mars retrograde in the 12th house, squaring Neptune in the 9th. So there may be a lot of ways in which there are self-sabotaging patterns, self-limiting, self-undoing behaviors that are getting in the way of this. And so it's going to take some time, but I think by the end of the month, when Mars in the 12th trines Saturn in the 8th, you'll do a lot more soul reflection and start to work through those things, so you can realize that you've been distracting yourself or slowing yourself down or holding yourself back unnecessarily. And so I think you'll really start to work through those again at the end of the month. Lastly, the most exciting thing of all is Jupiter retrograde in Pisces in the 9th, sextiling Pluto in the 7th. These changes are ultimately going to transform your relationships. You're going to feel like you have new ideals, new visions, new goals, new ways of perceiving people, and that's going to help attract the right person in your life. So if you've been kind of in this community or surrounded by people who don't get you, I feel like this Jupiter in the 9th is saying you're going to click in with yourself and your vision for your life, and that's going to bring everyone else up to speed. And that might mean, again, leaving a friend group and attracting new people, but that next version of friendship that you guys have is ultimately going to feel like it is helping you grow and evolve more as a person. So I'm seeing other people acting as a catalyst in your life for your belief in yourself and pushing yourself for growth. And I see that belief informing your friendships, like this beautiful symbiotic relationship, that now that you believe in yourself more and you're striving for what you want more in life and believing that you can have it, people around you, people are coming in around you that then reflect that back. So that's what I'm seeing for you, Cancer. If you guys would like to join me for my workshop this weekend on Mars, definitely check that out in the link in the description box down below. I'll have it linked. Mars is our warrior archetype, so we're going to be exploring what that means, learning how to embody it in a very healthy way. And I'm going to give you some really cool exercises to do to kind of journey within and not only see Mars in your chart, but actually feel it within your personality and kind of represent that archetype within you and use it as a kind of like a sword of discernment, a boundary setting, and all of the amazing things that Mars can bring. So definitely check that out if you're interested, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Leos. So for you guys, this eclipse is happening in your 10th house. The moon, Uranus, and the North Node are all here in your 10th house, indicating that you guys are going to have some exciting shifts and changes happening in your career, some new liveliness coming for you, and maybe some new potentials of what you can reach, things that you've never expected before. And I think that you guys are going to feel really creative and really inspired by these new beginnings happening in your careers, in your career or your life goals. And this is not just about beginnings, though, because this is a full moon and it's an eclipse. So it is absolutely representing an ending of something in order to bring about this change in your life. And so wherever we're having the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and the South Node, which is in Scorpio in your 4th house, is where we might start to have some changes, where we might start to have some endings occur. And when we have this eclipse is also squaring Saturn in the 7th house, which is showing what has been resisting this change in the past. So you've been wanting, or you've been having maybe some exciting things happen in your career lately. You've been maybe feeling like you're more alive in this area of your life, and now you're having the potential to have even more of that. Maybe there is some goal that you lay awake at night dreaming about, especially with the 7 of Cups, that you're working really hard on, that you're feeling very passionate about, something that you might not even want to share with everybody, or maybe you do, but it's not something that's necessarily super on the scene yet. It's not really come to life fully yet. And so I feel like many of you guys are brewing something, have been working on something, and you have the potential to see some doors opening or some shifts happening to bring about basically like a more public version of this, to bring more of this to light. And I think in order for that to happen, you'll have to let go of some older things. So the Sun, Mercury, Venus, South Node, and Scorpio in the 4th house can indicate our comfort zone, our desire to do things behind the scenes and not have to kind of answer to anybody or show people or have criticism. And it's a very safe kind of like little bubble of our home, right? The 4th house is our home, it's our family. So this area of your life, you may have been incubating here and spending your time and energy creating what you want here, feeling inspired, but hiding out a little bit. And there may be some kind of ending here where you're like, no, I need to push myself outside of my comfort zone. I need to get out there into the public a little bit more. And there could also be endings happening within the family or home structure that actually help facilitate this. And it could be unrelated, but it just kind of spurs you energetically to get out there into the world and do something differently. So like, let's say you have been living at home for a while and you're a college student. It's like you're finally deciding that I'm going to move out because my parents are getting a divorce or something, and I'm going to go out on my own. And I'm going to finally do something out in the world for myself. So that could be like an example, but it's going to look different for everyone. And there's a square with Saturn in the 7th house. So there is almost like this fear also that if you go out into the world and do something, that maybe your partner won't like it, or maybe you'll have certain relationships with people where they will criticize you, or maybe you fear just judgment, or maybe you fear that putting that much effort into your external world will not leave enough time for your relationships and important dynamics. So there's something where another person or people in general have been almost like holding you back in some way. And so this could be something, this is likely self-inflicted. You know, it's like, oh, they're going to think this, or, oh, I don't have time because of this. But it's like, really, you do. You just have to make the decision and do it yourself. And so the square with Saturn in the 7th is saying that you're going to have to evolve from those pangs of, I almost feel like there's like a codependency here of like, I'm going to attach to this person, and then as a result, I don't have to live out my biggest dreams. And this might all be happening unconsciously, but there's something in your life where there's maybe a relationship or something that keeps you in your little comfort zone that you might need to step away from. And this doesn't mean you have to break up, but it could mean that. But this doesn't necessarily mean you have to break up, but it does mean that you're going to have to back away from the binky, which is likely a person, and how they kind of feed into you staying the same. And so it's time for you guys to realize that these things that you felt like were limitations that you likely projected onto this person of, I have to spend this time with this person, or this person wouldn't allow me to do that, or whatever it is. Those are projections, and they're actually illusions. If you really actually talk to that person, or if you really find out what's going on, you'll start to see that this is an illusion that was built out of subconscious fears that occurred because of traumatic experiences. And it was likely from many lifetimes of cycles of pain and suffering where there was somebody who held you back. There was somebody's thumb that you lived under, or somebody told you couldn't do something, or you went out and did something and it hurt your relationship. But it's not actually what's here right now. And so I think a lot of what's happening is a projection of those past traumas and a creation of these limits that are not real, that are illusion, that you are feeling like they're real and projecting onto another person as them also kind of being part of what's holding you back. And so that might have been true in the past, but I don't think it's true right now. And I think you can see with the Seven of Cups, there is like a very big process of illusion here. And I think you're working on breaking that illusion and instead moving towards the things that inspire you, that excite you, that bring you like this charm and this magnetism and excitement in your life. And also with the Eight of Pentacles that help you work more on the things that you really love. And so for many of you as a Leo rising, this could be artistic in nature. I know a lot of Leos who are into music. Regardless, there's something that you might need to work on a little bit more and believe in yourself and not use others as an excuse to hold you back. And that's really what this shape-shifting card is about. It's about finally healing those patterns so that you can then change who you are. You're like literally shape-shifting into a new person who does this thing outwardly, who is a musician, if that's what you like to do, or who is a like whatever it is, fill in the blank there for you. Or if you're moving out of your parents' home, it's like, who is this empowered adult? You're like shape-shifting into this new reality and this new person and embodying that because you're finally healing those illusions or these illusory limiting beliefs and these painful traumas and everything from the past, and you're finally seeing things as for how they are. And I also pulled the Sanctuary card and the Feminine Energy card. So there's something about this where I feel like you guys are meant to be actually just kind of flowing with what's coming in for you. So instead of feeling like, I can't do this because of this, it's just, if you're feeling it, you're doing it. You're honoring that desire. You're honoring it and you're moving with it and not trying to like inhibit or control it. And that's like a very creative energy, you know, and you're Leo, so you're very creative. So there's something that wants to be birthed through you and not have societal or relationship expectations or limitations put on it. And so I think you're going to start to do that now. And the Sanctuary card, I think it's going to make you feel so much more at home in yourself and so much more emotionally satisfied. And I see that with Venus being in the 4th, trining Neptune in the 8th. I see a deep healing happening here. As you express yourself creatively, move through your desires and honor them, you're going to start to see that these years of pain and trauma that have been stored in the subconscious are slowly being healed, and the beliefs around those things are being transformed, and they are shape-shifting into beliefs that then support this growth and this process within you. You also have Mars in the 11th retrograde squaring Neptune in the 8th. So there may be ways, though, in which your community or your friendships could bring about some of those past pains, and that might come to the surface right now. And this might be something completely different, but regardless, there could be this feeling like something's happening in my friend group or something's going on in my life, in my community, that is bringing up some of those pains or making me feel um, that insecurity again, or dissipating my confidence in myself because of all this stuff going on, because of its distracted nature, or because of how it's affecting me emotionally. But I see this really settling down by the end of the month with Mars making a trine to Saturn in the 7th. I feel like you're going to have a key person in your life, or even just key relationships in your life, that help kind of solidify you, ground you. And there isn't so much confusion or upset about your community and your friend group or your future and your goals and all those things. And as a result of this, solidifying and this person like kind of grounding you, I think you're ultimately going to be able to move forward again. Lastly, you have Jupiter and Pisces in the 8th house, sextiling Pluto in the 6th. So I feel like you guys are, again, doing some massive healing from past trauma. And it's literally just about you sitting down every day and working on the things that you want to work on. Like, actually, are you changing? Are you changing your habits? Are you changing the way that you show up in your day? Like how you're spending your time, very practically. And if you are, you'll notice that's where the healing comes from, which I already mentioned. So that's what I'm saying for you, Libra Rising. I hope that resonates. If you would like to join us for the Mars workshop I'm doing on Saturday, check out my link down below. We're going to be talking about Mars as a warrior archetype, and we're going to figure out what our unique warrior archetype is and how to best embody it through our chart, but also through these really cool embodiment exercises, and how to bring it into balance if we've maybe overexpressed or underexpressed our Mars. So definitely check that out. I hope to see you guys there, and I hope you have a great one. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Virgo risings. So this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 9th house. The moon, Uranus, North Node are all in Taurus there in the 9th. And then the sun is opposite it with Mercury, Venus, and the South Node is Scorpio in the 3rd house. So, okay, the other thing I want to mention that's very important is that this full moon is also squaring Saturn in the 6th house. So I hope that you guys watched the beginning. If not, definitely go back, because all of us are going through this point in time where we're shedding older versions of ourselves. But in the process, we're going to have to confront our habitual ways of thinking for you. And this is because 3, 6, 9 house, all three of these houses are representative of the mental faculties. These are our beliefs. This is the information that we ingest, that we share, that we communicate, the things that we think about, our perspectives and philosophies and morals about life. And then the 6th house, while it is an action-oriented house, is also a very mental house from what I've seen. It's related often to this version of ourselves that is hyper-focused on perfection. It's kind of in line with the Virgo archetype. And it feels like in the 6th house, there is this kind of dogged, work hard, gung-ho attitude where we might even sacrifice ourselves and our own well-being, our mental health even, for the sake of execution, for the sake of progress. And unfortunately, with Saturn in the 6th, it can feel like this really uphill battle where we're trying to make progress, but with Saturn here in this particular house, the progress isn't something that we necessarily can see and feel in a very accurate way. It's something that's delayed and that comes later, and we're chugging up this hill, and we can make it mean many things about us that we haven't seen this progress yet. And we can also continue, as a result of what we're making this mean, to sacrifice our own mental well-being to keep pushing forward. And so what is really needing to undergo a shift here with Uranus in the 9th, with the moon here, is that we're having to shift our entire belief system. And this may be in the way that you prioritize but the spiral turns inward, so it's in a new way, and one in which you're more evolved, right? So I guess maybe you're going outwards. So you're achieving more and more growth and seeing new versions of yourself. You may encounter similar issues, similar themes in the cycle, which is what life is. Life is all cycles. But you're going to encounter it in a really new way, and you're going to see that you're making progress. Whereas before, I feel like you were repeating the same exact cycle. It's like you're hitting restart on a video game and you're going back to the same level. And in this video game, you're now up leveling. So you're still playing the same game. You're still beating these bad guys, but it's on a new advanced level, and you have new badges. You're a new person. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. And the hummingbird tells me that you're now looking at yourself from a place of love and acceptance, and you're looking at yourself more from optimism, and you're planning everything accordingly, and also with this more wise version of yourself where you're connecting more deeply to what feels in your soul like it's the most important thing to do or the most important way to think, and you're reacting accordingly. All right, that message can go to the side. All right, Venus in the third, trining Neptune in the seventh, is very beautiful for relationships. I think you'll also start to see that your perception in relationships starts to improve as well. And I think you'll start to notice that you're able to let go of maybe some old patterns and old ways of thinking that actually were blocking you from true intimacy. And it might be something that you encounter that's uncomfortable, or it might be exciting. It'll really depend on the person and your individual chart, but I feel like there's going to be something that instigates this new level of openness and vulnerability within the relationship. And this could be any relationship. It doesn't have to be a partnership. Maybe some of you could meet a new partner with this rose card. It is very possible that you guys could meet a new love, or I definitely think this has to do with another person, though. I was going to say it could be your relationship with yourself. I don't think so, because of the fact that this is the seventh house, which is about other people. You also have Mars retrograde and Gemini in the 10th house, squaring Neptune in the seventh. So there may be some weird thing to do with your career and your relationship. This might feel like you're not quite sure how these things fit together, or there's some weird collision of these two areas of your life. But I do see this kind of settling, the dust kind of settling and things becoming clearer by the end of the month when Mars makes a trine to Saturn in the 6th house. And then lastly, you have Jupiter and Pisces in the 7th, sextiling Pluto in the 5th. So this is where I kind of feel like this is coming in. Well, let me go back to what I was saying before. I think that maybe this thing with your career could, for some of you, it could be related to autonomy versus connection. So like Mars in the 10th is very autonomous. It's very concerned with its own ish and making its own career a thing. That's part of you guys right now. And Neptune in the 7th is like, but I love my partner and I want to be with them. It's like, how do I make these things work? How do I honor my time with my friends and my autonomy? So I think that for many of you could be one of the things that's going on right now. And some of the healing and the belief shifting that you guys are going to do is going to help you know when is the right time to prioritize your own autonomy. The other thing I want to say with Jupiter sextiling Pluto in the 5th is that I think you guys are going to be going through a transformation sexually. So this new intimacy, I think, is also going to open you up creatively and sexually. And that's why I see with the call of the Siren and the Lilith, I think that you guys are going to be opened up to this part of yourself where you start to recognize your own powers of magnetism, your own powers of attraction and seduction. And this is on an energetic level. So for some of you, this can manifest in a very matter-of-fact, literal way where you start having amazing sex, For many of you, though, this is so much deeper than that. This is talking about Lilith, who has been very much defined by her sexuality. I'm going to do a whole video on the dark feminine and all this. But she was kind of ostracized for being a highly sexual person, for not wanting to be defined by a man, for doing her own thing. She was demonized. And then we have that energy, but she is full of our like dark sexual desires and like the part of ourselves that we're like, ooh, like, I don't know if I can show that. And oftentimes society will shame us for that. And then the other card is the Siren card, which is like, you know, the siren that would sing to the sailors to like gently kind of bring them in and they would be under a trance. And so both of these elements of ourselves are highly intoxicating. They have this element of like, it is this kind of it is this prominent sexual energy within us that knows our own worthiness, that owns our own magnetism, our own value, and it makes us not necessarily like look for that outside of us. And because we are so deeply fulfilled internally, people will start seeing that within us and they become magnetized by that. They're like, she doesn't need anyone. She doesn't need anything but herself. And that is the most attractive and dangerous kind of person. And so that is what I'm seeing here for you guys. You're starting to like fill yourself up in this really beautiful and maybe sexual way where your energy just becomes contagious and magnetic and infectious, and people want what you have, but it's because you've prioritized and started loving yourself. And so I feel like that is going to make you just extremely attractive in general, but I think it's also going to really give back and fill your own cup. So that is what I'm seeing for you, Virgo. If that resonates, please let me know by commenting down below. But before you go, I am having a Mars workshop this Saturday. I highly recommend you guys sign up. It is going to be around the archetype of the warrior within us. So we're going to look at our chart to understand what that unique kind of secret sauce of our warrior is. And then we're going to go into these fun embodiment exercises, how we see when it's in or out of balance and how to bring it back into balance. So I've never seen a workshop like this before. I've never done a workshop like this before. I highly recommend checking it out. And I just kind of want to see how you guys like it. So I'll see you guys on Saturday, and I hope you have a great one. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Libra risings. So this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 8th house with Uranus involved, the North Node as well. And it's opposite the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the South Node in Scorpio in your 2nd house. So, man, you guys, I just already had a lot coming through because I was looking at your cards. And I'm like, okay, what boundaries are you setting, girlfriend? What boundaries? Because I pulled the Queen of Swords and the 10 of Wands, and I am sensing that you are over some bullshit. You are seriously over it. And this makes a lot of sense because an eclipse in the 8th house is sometimes kind of like dramatic because the 8th house is where we often store a ton of unresolved issues from the past. It's where our insecurities lie. It's where our traumas happen, the crisis of our lives, where we feel like we aren't enough, where we have a lot of fear. All of those things are perfectly wrapped up in a little bow of the 8th house. And your moon Uranus energy here, to me, is saying that this is being shaken out of you and released because you are over this bullshit. If you have been going through an old cycle, if it has been coming back up into your mind recently again, if your old bullshit has just been rising to the surface, I see you cutting that down, liberating yourself from it, and realizing this kind of toxicity here is finally on its way out for good. And I think that you guys are going to have the sense of inner peace like you've never had before. And it's because I think that in many ways, while you may have been processing a lot of this stuff behind the scenes and underneath the surface, I think in many ways there may have been some fear lingering, or there may have been some ways that with Saturn in the 5th house, you could kind of bypass facing some of these things. Saturn in the 5th house has a lot to do with our pursuit of our personal expression. And so there may be a lot of ways in which you put a lot of energy into maybe improving yourself. That's not necessarily 5th house, but like ways in which you kind of were trying to find what your essence is and your special sauce is and put it out into the world. And so you could have been spending a lot of energy and a lot of time, since Saturn's been in the 5th, focusing on this. Okay, how can I be the best entrepreneur? How can I be the best mom? How can I be the best lover? How can I be the best writer? How can I express myself the best? All these ways in which we're like, I'm going to do the best that I can do in this way for myself. Like, I'm going to follow this passion. I'm going to be the best at this passion. But sometimes what we're not actually acknowledging and facing along the way are maybe ways in which we could be driven by insecurities or ways in which we could be driven by fear. I'm not just trying to be the best mom because I love my kids, no offense, but I'm trying to be the best mom because there is a part of me that feels judged or that's judging myself. And if I'm not perfect, I'm not good enough, then da da da. And you just kind of go in this whole thought process. And so there may be some of you guys where that thought process was not fully acknowledged. And so as a result, even though you may have done some inner work and this and that, ultimately there could have been some things that haven't been fully let go of because they've actually been a part of this kind of journey in learning how to be the best at something. And it's been this kind of toxic fuel. And I think you're starting to realize I'm tired of my own bullshit. Maybe for some of you, you didn't even know it was there and fueling you the entire time. Or maybe maybe you're just now discovering this. Or maybe you knew it was there, but you couldn't help it, right? You couldn't help but get stuck in some of those fears of, what if I'm not a good mom? Or what if I am not good at business? Or whatever it is that's associated with this personal expression and being good at something out in the world and having meaning and having worth and having value, being worthy of being admired by others. It's like, that's what the fifth house feels like. It feels like I'm going to do my best and people are going to see me and honor me. And Saturn here is saying, you've been doing this, really working on this responsibly, diligently, disciplined, but also you've been doing it out of fear, out of insecurity, out of shame, out of judgment, out of self-criticism, out of self-doubt. And now you're finally facing this in a real way. The sun moving through your second house, you're going through almost like a crisis of your values. And especially also where you kind of show up within relationships and how you value yourself within relationships, and maybe what you've tolerated from others and boundaries you haven't kept with yourself and others as a result of some of this self-doubt. Or maybe you've kept those boundaries, but internally you feel like you're crumbling around them. So there's something going on here where I feel like your boundaries and your honesty and and the discernment and realizing all these things, how you've been maybe driven by these fears, all of this truth that's been building is starting to weigh on you with this 10 of Wands, and you're tired of it. You're tired of living accordingly. You're tired of maybe feeling that shame or letting other people get inside your head about whether you can value yourself or you can spend money on this thing or you can have boundaries or whatever it is. It's like you're not allowing this toxic mindset anymore. You're not allowing yourself to be shamed by yourself or by others. And I think you're setting that boundary with yourself and with others. And you're like, I am going to know when something is right for me, when something isn't right for me. And I'm going to know it because I just have absolute truth and clarity on my side. And I think this is like a positive manifestation of Saturn. This is my truth. This is my clarity. Instead of the lower vibration of Saturn, which is more fear-based. So I'm seeing just a massive evolution where you're now able to pursue what you desire, where you're now able to feel like you are empowered and capable in the pursuit of that desire and not coming from a place of lack. And so again, I feel like you guys are going to feel like you can achieve anything after this. And it's going to come from a place where you're just wiping away those fears in so many different facets. Fears of rejection, especially. That's a huge one of this. With Saturn the 5th, there's a desire for admiration and affection and like public attention. And with an eclipse in the 8th house, it's like, I love myself. I'm empowering myself. I don't need to be accepted in order to get this thing that I want or to have, to feel happy and have my fullest expression. You guys also have Venus in the 2nd, trining Neptune in the 6th. So I feel like as you reorient your value systems, you'll start to see that it's working in your favor and things in your life flow a lot better. You might even find that your intuition is actually very helpful in deciding what to do next. It's like, oh, this feels really good, so I'm going to go here. Oh, this feels really good, I'm going to go there. And there's not so much of like the self-doubt or having to really sit and process things. I feel like it's like this clear channel where you're able to just direct the energy because there's not all this other things meddling or muddying the water. You guys also have Mars retrograde in the ninth squaring Neptune in the sixth. So there may be ways in which your existing ideology about life is also in conflict with your kind of intuitive urges. Like, oh, but I said I was going to do this thing and I committed to this, or I wanted to learn this thing, or I have this philosophy or this belief about life. But then actually right now I don't want to do that thing, or right now this isn't really in accordance with my beliefs. And so there could be this little bit of conflict where these two areas of your life need a little bit of merging together. And by the end of the month, I think that will happen when Mars trines Saturn the 5th. I think you'll start to see how you can bring together the things that you've kind of already committed to and the things that you want to do intuitively, or your belief systems with what you're doing practically every day. It's like, I think they're going to start merging in a really nice way. The last thing I'll talk about is Jupiter in the 6th house sextiling Pluto in the 4th. So I think that you guys are going to start achieving more career success if you have a job, more health success, more stability, financial stability in your life. Although the South Node is in your second house, so it's not always the easiest. But Jupiter in the 6th house, I'm just seeing like you guys are stabilizing a lot more. Like my daily routine, my daily way of talking to myself, the feeling that I get just being at home in myself and in my own life, all those things are improving, which generally is going to improve your finances. And with the sextile to Pluto in the 4th, I think that this is also bringing a lot of self-awareness. This is like the introspection, this time where you're like analyzing yourself and understanding where you have been maybe living out fears. You're finally able to address those and see those things clearly. And as a result, you're able to start manifesting more of what you want. You become very attractive, very magnetic. And that's why I intuitively am saying that you're going to get more money. I don't know for sure. We'll see. But yeah, I kind of feel like many of you guys will. So anyway, that is what I'm seeing for you, Libra Rising. Before you hop off, I recommend checking out my workshop, which is happening this Saturday on the topic of Mars, the warrior within. So we're going to talk about the different archetypes of Mars, and we're going to discover what your personal archetype is based off of your astrology chart. And then we're going to go into fun embodiment exercises and learn how to balance out the warrior within us. Maybe sometimes it's excessive, maybe sometimes it's too suppressed. We're going to learn what that looks like and how to work with that energy. I've never done a workshop like this, and I've also never seen a workshop like this. So I'm honestly very, very stoked, and I hope to see you guys there. Have a great eclipse. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Scorpio rising. So for you guys, this eclipse is in Taurus. This lunar eclipse is happening in your 7th house, opposite the sun, which is in your sign right now, in your house, in the 1st house, which the sun is also with Mercury, Venus, and the South Node. So all those planets are in your 1st house, and the moon and Uranus and North Node are in Taurus in your 7th. So I'm not going to lie, you guys. I definitely have been getting a message for you guys in particular that this might feel like a very kind of shadowy time. And I think ultimately obviously for your best good, but it might feel like a little bit more challenging emotionally, because the South Node is in your sign. Typically when that occurs, especially during eclipse season where this is really activated, there's usually some type of letting go. And this process of having to go through the shadows and maybe let go of something in your life related to your entire life, related to you as a person, that can always feel like it's really scary, this act of kind of surrendering or losing part of yourself. And ultimately, it's here to realign you, because when the South Node moves through your sign, it typically is going to indicate that there is something in your life that is actually not right for you anymore, or multiple things in your life. It's like this purging process that occurs when the South Node moves through our sign. And so you've been already going through that for a while now. But again, the eclipses are what activate it in a fated and karmic way, where you're finally having to kind of see with clarity what isn't working, what isn't right. And I think for many of you, it's going to be this time where you're turning inward, especially with this square to Saturn in the fourth. You're ultimately turning inward to face the darkness, to face the shadows, to face where things are not aligned. And you're encouraged to really befriend this period of time, even though it can be uncomfortable. You're ultimately befriending it, or ultimately the gift of befriending it is because you are going to get something amazing on the other side of it. There's so much learning and depth and self-understanding that, again, will realign you to better things. And with Uranus in the 7th house with this moon, this could bring about some kind of changes in your relationship dynamics in particular. Maybe some changes with people in your life. Maybe it's about somebody else, but is really going to affect you in a deeply personal way. And it could kind of shake you to your core a little bit. And with this square to Saturn in the 4th, there has been something that you have been leaning on for comfort, especially within the home. Maybe you've kind of really kind of held very close and tightly to your home life and the place that you live and your family or whatever it is. And there's something about it that's actually holding you back. There's something about it that is stagnating or that needs adjustment. And you wouldn't be willing to do that just on your own. But with this eclipse occurring in the 7th, it's trying to kind of, it's like when your battery dies in your car and you're like jump starting it, it's like that. There's something in your life where you're jump starting it with more energy with this Uranus here, where it's kind of like shaking you up and saying, you have to stop holding on to things. With this South Node in your sign, you have to stop holding on to things that are not meant for you, especially in regards to wherever Saturn is, which is around our home or our family or our home life or our roommates or something around that. It's like this area of your life has been just, it's not working. There's something not working. And your refusal to acknowledge that and to just stay with the status quo is against nature in many ways. And so I think you're going to be confronting that, realizing that you have to let go of things that you've held close. And it's going to create kind of like a change up in, or maybe even a destabilization in your relationships as a result. But it's ultimately going to create freedom in that area of your life. So you're going to find relationships that actually feel more authentic, that eventually feel like they were much better for you all along. And you've kind of almost been like resisting them because of your desire to hold on to the old. And I pulled the aloneness card. So I think many of you are going to feel a little bit more alone, but that's because this is a really important time to actually process what's going on internally. If you don't, I think it's going to come out sideways. Like it's going to either manifest itself out of control. So it's like some event happening that, again, you don't have control over, or it's going to manifest sideways like depression or anxiety because it's like all this unexpressed, unprocessed emotion. So you guys are having to ultimately, I think, feel alone in order to discover what it is that's not working for you anymore. I also pulled this Cat's Claw Purification card, and this is about facing the shadows with curiosity. And it says, small-mindedness, shame, disappointment, and unworthiness are shadows, and not to succumb to them. So think about this during this time when you're going through these changes in your life. Do you feel small-minded, shameful, disappointed, or unworthy in some way? Because that is what you're meant to purge and get rid of, because that's very easy to come up with the South Node in your sign, with Scorpio eclipses in general. And that's what we're meant to purge. Looney, come here. Come here. It's dinner time, so my dog's like, hello. At 4 o'clock, she just starts going crazy and just walking around everywhere. Another reason I say that all of this is because I pulled the Moon and the Nine of Wands. And if you know tarot, then you know that these are two cards of, first of all, things that have been hidden in the shadows with this Moon card. So things within you that you have refused to acknowledge, shadows within you that you've pushed to the side, that you haven't brought to the light. And the Nine of Wands is like I'm going to just grin and bear it. I'm going to just keep going on. But because this is an eclipse, that's not possible anymore. You have to own up to some of these things. You have to really be honest with some of these things, because the truth as a Scorpio rising is the most important thing in your life. Honesty with oneself and being willing to burn your life up for what is more like reflective of who you truly are and what you truly want is what Scorpio is all about. You're willing to transform. You're willing to shed those layers, to lose the things that you use as self-protection. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but it means that you're more than capable of it as a Scorpio. You also have Venus in the first, trining Neptune in the fifth. So I do think that you're going to be getting a lot of divine support right now. You might also find creative inspiration. You might find that the universe is ultimately going to look favorably upon you for making these changes. And I think that your friendships could be a very beautiful area of support, or your hobbies. So if you have something of interest, like some, passion project or person that you really enjoy hanging out with, those are the things that you want to turn to right now to kind of help you move through that process, which can be alienating and feeling alone. And I do think you're meant to embrace being alone, but that doesn't mean that you have to be alone all the time, right? It doesn't mean you have to push people away. It just means that you have to make time for that. And I don't mean alone like watching TV. I mean actually sitting with yourself, like actually journaling, thinking, walking, having some silence. That is what I mean by being alone. You also have Mars retrograde in Gemini in the 8th, squaring Neptune in the 5th. So there can also be ways with Mars in the 8th where you could feel like you're a little bit sensitive right now, and maybe a little bit like defensive and traumatized and triggered and all of these very intense kind of emotions. And the square with Neptune in the 5th, it could feel like your ease of just being with that friend, or your ease of just working on your favorite hobby, or doing your favorite craft, or spending time with your kids as like this outlet, might not come as easily to you because of your emotional destabilization, because of how much transformation you're going through and demons you're looking at within yourself. But I see this stabilizing by the end of the month when Mars trines Saturn in the 4th, and I see you guys being able to lean more into those aspects of your life for comfort. So maybe you'll have a little bit more alone time around the actual eclipse, and then you can start redirecting your energy into important friendships and hobbies and interests that really light you up and actually feel like they are authentic and aligned with who you are and who you're meant to be. Lastly, you have Jupiter and Pisces in the 5th house, sextiling Pluto in the 3rd. And so this is, again, another confirmation of moving towards the things that feel aligned with you. And I think doing that, as you start to embrace those hobbies or those friendships, or start dating again, or whatever it is, if you do have a breakup or something, which could happen for a lot of Scorpio risings, as you start to do that and do the things that fill up your own cup and feel like they make you excited about your own life again, and they feel, again, really aligned instead of just going along with how you've always done things. As you start to grow in this way, you'll notice that with the sextile of Pluto in the 5th, or the 3rd, that you'll start feeling like anything is possible for you. You'll start noticing that the way that you think, the way that you talk, the way that you look at life starts to adjust in a way that empowers you, because you realize that you're an agent of change, that you have the capacity to align again with what's right for you. And because of that, you can always be doing that. And so life seems more exciting. Life seems like there's more potential, because you start to feel empowered by not being stuck in the same kind of position, complaining about it, thinking about it, mulling over, and not letting it go. Now that the South Node is in your sign, it's time to let go. And as a result of finally doing this, you'll see how much power you truly have. And then you can start manifesting and designing the life of your dreams. But it's not until you take that agency back and make a change on this really stagnant, long overdue area of your life that you're going to notice. And this is again in the area of relationships and home. So those two areas are where you need the biggest changes, where you've been the most stagnant, and the universe is here to push you into the darkness so that you can eventually get to the light. So if this resonates, please let me know by commenting down below. I wish you the best of luck. I am running a workshop on Mars this weekend. I actually think it'd be extremely beneficial for you since you are a Scorpio rising and Mars is your traditional ruler. And I think given the circumstances of what you might be going through at this time, this workshop can be extremely empowering because we're going to be looking at the archetype of our inner warrior, the part of us that is helping us survive, that defends us, that is the passionate side of us. And a lot of those things can become muted when we neglect our true desires for our comfort zone or our limitations. And so you may need to kind of reaffirm your relationship with your Mars, with your desire, with your willpower. And that's a lot about what this agency thing I've been talking about is related to. And so this workshop is going to be really fun because we'll look at that unique warrior archetype and how to embody it, what that looks like for you in your chart. And we'll go through actual exercises. So I've never done anything like that before, like this workshop before. I highly recommend checking it out. I will link that down in the description box down below. The best of luck to you guys. I love you so much, and I hope you have a great one. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Sagittarius risings. So for you guys, this eclipse in Taurus, this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 6th house. And Taurus is actually, or the moon is actually conjunct Uranus and the North Node. So we're definitely expecting a lot of shakeups, a lot of changes, especially in the area of life associated with the 6th house. And the sun is conjunct Mercury, Venus, and the South Node all in Scorpio on the 12th. So there is definitely a process whenever I see the 12th of release, of letting go. You have the 12th and you have the South Node, which are all, again, kind of compounding that same meaning. And ultimately, this eclipse is also making a tight square to Saturn in your 3rd house. So what I've been noticing with Saturn in particular is that is where we've been having the resistance occur in our life, where we've been keeping things the status quo, where we have been maybe investing too much energy into this area of our life or not being willing to change. And with Saturn in the 3rd house, this can oftentimes come with things related to our friendships, how we spend our time, the way that we talk or think about things, definitely our communication styles in general. But those areas of your life might have kind of cemented or fossilized in some way where you were meant to undergo some changes. And those changes are now going to be pushed into life now that we are seeing this aspect come up in eclipse. And this is because we've had this Saturn square Uranus go on where we've been maybe meaning to have more liberation in the area of Uranus, which I think for many of you is going to be about embodying more inner confidence and owning your worth to end a cycle of self-limiting beliefs. And this could have been kind of battling back and forth between this all of 2020 between, feeling like I'm worthy and I can do it all. And then this other feeling that I need to be practical and I need to do what makes sense. And I need to kind of think within this certain mindset that the world keeps preaching to me. And what I'm seeing here is that I feel like you guys are getting sovereignty over your own mind. You're breaking free from these inhibitions. And you're embodying more respect for yourself as a result of this. More integrity, self-respect, willpower, and grit will come as a result of you finally empowering yourself, which is not something that I usually think about with the 6th house. The 6th house, which is where this eclipse is happening, is generally associated with being the less empowered one. However, because Uranus is here, I feel like it's shaking everything up on its head. It's doing things differently and ending the cycle where you actually felt like you were the one with lesser power. And so this could have been in any kind of area of your life. You might have felt like you're you're the one who earns less money in your partnership. And as a result, you feel like you're just having a little bit less power, or you are in a place where everyone speaks a different language than you. And so you feel like there's even subliminal messages of, I'm not good enough, or I don't fully equate, you know, in some kind of capacity. There can be so many different examples, but we're seeing how these imbalances now with Uranus are going to be brought to light, and they are actually not, they might be quite literal imbalances, like, hey, I make less, or I speak a different language, or I have a different type of job than this person, or whatever it is. They might be quite literal I've been recording all day. Differences, I'm just going to use that word. But ultimately, though, Uranus is going to come in here and create something that feels like it's more freeing. And it's trying to make you feel like you are just as worthy as everyone else. And it's funny, I pulled this ferocious femininity card. And I think that this is you guys. You're like owning your ish, you know, it's like, I'm just as great as all these people, and I'm willing to assert myself in these situations. I'm willing to stand up for myself. I'm willing to believe in myself. I'm willing to fight for myself. And I'm not just going to sit here in this environment of feeling less than. I'm not going to perpetuate this thought cycle that the square with Saturn in the third house is bringing. Saturn in the third is just saying, it's telling you all of your limitations. It's telling you why you don't measure up, and why you're not smart enough, and why you're not equal, and how to be realistic about things, and all of this. And it's been limiting you. And Uranus is finally coming in here and saying, that's enough. We're going to shake things up and create a different pattern, a different cycle, a different routine that feels like I am more in my divine feminine energy. And the reason I say that is because the Sun, Mercury, Venus, South Node in Scorpio in the 12th house is activating your receptivity. It's activating your psychic nature, your intuition, and it's making you deeply in touch with your ability to surrender, to receive, to just know, to not have to control things, to not have to manipulate things or understand things. And it's through this divine feminine that you're becoming very empowered. And I think that's ultimately going to also help you feel like these perceived limitations don't actually exist. And you have unlimited potential because the support of the universe is on your side. You have the Empress in the World card. You have this brand new cycle of abundance because you recognize, like this Empress does, that she has the capacity to nurture and create the things and bring the things that she wants to life. And I feel like you guys are really starting to see that. I think you guys are starting to feel a lot more empowered, a lot more in touch. But the ironic thing is you're becoming empowered by giving up like some control, which was a similar message to Gemini, I think. Not only to giving up some control, but to loosening the rigidity of the mind and opening up to your psychic senses. Because the mind has been telling you life is one way and it makes you feel inferior and less than. And the psychic self sees the whole universe. It sees your soul. It feels the energy. It feels how much you contribute to this world in your positive way, and your maybe intuitive way or psychic way, or maybe you're just getting psychic downloads about how you're meant to contribute to this world. Regardless, you're like a sensitive soul that has a lot to give in diverse ways that your little Saturn in the third house kind of constricted little small-minded way is never going to see. And so I think with this psychic healing and surrender card and the Sun and all those planets in the 12th house, I think you're surrendering to these psychic abilities, which are giving you more information about all of the beautiful things that you have to offer the world and how you can manifest them also in a really practical way as well. That's what Uranus in the 6th house does, is that I'm not just going to give you these psychic downloads, but I'm going to also give you maybe an opportunity or more information or something that's going to inspire you, that's going to give you a lead on the path of how to bring that intuition or that guidance to life. And so I think you're going to start, instead of, like, you're not going to completely ignore Saturn and you're not going to buy too much into him, but you're going to start first with your psychic knowing and then integrate the practical application and real world cementing that Saturn brings to the table. So let's say you did identify with one of these, like where you were realizing, okay, I don't have this kind of job, so I'm not worthy according to Saturn in the third house. This kind of psychic ability, basically what's happening in this eclipse is going to stop that cycle of thinking, and it's going to open you up to the feminine receptivity and the psychic ability that's going to tell you, actually, here are all of your gifts. You're super, super good at all of these things. And as a result of that, you can go out and make this happen in the world, and you have this amazing impact. And then I start to see you feeling like you have something to fight for, and you start looking at life in a really different way. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing for you. You also have Venus in the 12th, trining Neptune in the 4th. So I think that this is ultimately going to be a process of coming home to yourself, especially with Venus in the 12th. It's like, now that I'm valuing my spiritual purpose and my psychic downloads that I'm getting, I now feel soothed emotionally and stabilized emotionally because I know this to be true in my soul. You also have Mars retrograde in Gemini in the 7th, squaring Neptune in the 4th. So there may be ways in which you still compare yourself to others, or other people come into your life and confuse this very strong and cemented self-understanding. But eventually I see this kind of stabilizing at the end of the month when Mars trines Saturn in the 3rd. And I feel like you get the kind of grounding in this new vision and this new perception that you deserve and that you want. Lastly, you have Jupiter retrograde in Pisces in the 4th, sextiling Pluto in the 2nd. So the beautiful part about all this is that the more that you recognize that you are just inherently powerful, the more that you're going to start not only feeling like you belong and like you are worthy and like you are at home and accepted in whatever area of life or work or whatever it is, but also the better that you'll manifest more money and attract more things into your life. So I feel like this whole stage of empowering and trusting your intuition is going to help you manifest not only finances, but a feeling of emotional and physical stability in your life. So that's, Sag, you always have the most confusing messages to me, and I feel like they're so abstract, and maybe that's just because I'm channeling your energy, which Sag are super philosophical. I don't know, but they feel like they make the least sense to me, and I'm a Gemini. But I hope that resonates. And I wanted to invite you guys to a workshop I'm having on Saturday. If you're interested, definitely check that out down below. It's a workshop on Mars. We're going over the archetype of the warrior and how we can basically best embody our own unique essence of warrior. So we're going to look at that in our own particular charts. And we're also going to see how we can bring it into balance. So if we have maybe an overactive or underactive Mars, we're going to see how that might show up in our lives and some really tangible action steps we can take to bring that into balance. So it's a very unique kind of workshop that I've never done before or even seen before, and I highly recommend attending. So I hope to see you guys there, and I hope you have a great one. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Capricorn Rising. So for you guys, this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 5th house, conjunct to Uranus in the North Node. So the moon, Uranus, North Node in the 5th, and then the sun is opposite it, conjunct Mercury, Venus, and the South Node in the sign of Scorpio. So you guys, this is kind of exciting because I feel like the changes that are happening for you are going to be very positive ones. With Uranus in the 5th house and the moon in the 5th house, there is an activation here of innate talents and gifts that I feel like are going to be brought to life in a really exciting way. And for all of us, we've been undergoing this Uranus-Saturn square since 2021, which is being activated at this eclipse because the sun and moon are squaring, and Uranus are squaring Saturn in your 2nd house. So it was kind of on and off throughout 2021 where we wanted to make progress but felt like we couldn't. And then now it's at this kind of last push during this eclipse where I think that progress is starting to be realized. So again, as I mentioned, I think that the 5th house is a time for you to feel like you can fully and authentically honor your innate talents. That square with Saturn in the 2nd house has been a part of you that has been really realistic, that has been really focused on survival, on doing what you absolutely have to do to make sure that you protect and preserve. It's a lot about preservation. The problem about preservation is that it's not a growth mindset. It's just trying to keep what you have, which brings about a lot of scarcity. But an eclipse in the fifth house is actually about growing, about creating the skills and the gifts and the talents that actually bear fruit. So it's like I've been listening to a lot of business people lately, and Alex Hermosi, one of my favorites, was talking about when he sold his business, he had, $50 million in the bank or something like that, but he actually felt poorer. And it's because he no longer had an asset that was continuing to bring in cash flow every month. Instead, he had a finite amount of money that was going to decrease over time. You might argue that that's a lot of money, but regardless, the case is here that there is a prosperity kind of circulatory generating energy that's happening with the fifth house. And there is a preserving, maintaining scarce energy in the second house. So this second house energy has been winning. The side of you that's fearing loss, essentially, that's fearing not having enough. And maybe it was constantly on like the radar of maybe this is the thing that's going to do it. Maybe this is the thing that's going to bankrupt me. I have to pinch here, save here, or just worry even if you're not acting on it. So that's very much the energy that you've been in. And now it's time to shift with this eclipse into the energy of realizing that your gifts bring in the money, that you are the creator of financial prosperity. And it's funny because I pulled the Star and the 10 of Pentacles. So I think that I just got chills when I said that. Oh, I feel like you're finally realizing that you can have it all. You have hope now in your financial future. You feel like you can create something for yourself. So there's not so much fear. There's not so much scarcity, because it's like, even if I lost it all today, I could make it all again tomorrow because the skills and the prosperity are within me. And I actually feel like this is something unlocked from a past life, because I pulled this card, this Guardian card, which is about ancestry. And it's talking about gifts from past lives, dormant talents that have been blocked. And I think the Saturn in the second house has blocked these talents out of fear and out of practicality and all of those matters that sound really fine, but are actually limiting us. And so I think you're really starting to move ahead as you start to realize that you embody the prosperity, as I mentioned. So, and I do think that this is something that you earned from a past life. So it's like not only a talent that you're bringing forward from then, but it's also something that I feel like you've been working super hard for, and karmically you deserve this kind of outpay for that work. So the only thing I'll mention though is that this card, this Sanctuary card, is talking about resting and filling up your own cup. So my concern here is that some of you guys are working really, really hard, which is typical for Capricorns, and you're not filling up your own cup and resting. So you might feel or might be driven with the Saturn second house energy out of fear to never stop working, to never feel like you have enough. What a horrible feeling. You guys can change that. You don't have to work your way out of that feeling, because the reality is that you will actually never work your way out of that feeling. It will always be there. Just like that Alex guy I was talking about has $50 million or $100 million in the bank, and he still feels poor, and he still feels insecure, and he's still having to prove himself. That feeling never goes away. And so you will literally work yourself to the bone and to death because of this fear of scarcity with Saturn in the second house, rather than just changing your internal world. And so what I think at this eclipse, or what I recommend at this eclipse, is to reorient your internal world and your feeling body to realize that you are prosperous inside of yourself, and that you don't have to push so hard and work so hard to exhaustion to avoid the lack that you're so scared of, because even if the lack came, you would still be fine. You could still work your way out of it. So maybe that's not the right word, but you could still find your way out of it. And so basically it's trying to change this perspective about yourself, and that rest is bad, or that you can't take that time for yourself. You have to keep giving and giving and giving, because again, you're going to be like, all right, I'll rest after this point in time. And you're never going to do it, guys, because you don't understand that this is actually driven by a really deep internal insecurity. Not maybe there's thoughts of I'm not enough, but especially a thought set because I'm not enough, I can't attract enough. And so I feel like a lot of what you're working on at this time is realizing that you are enough, that you have enough, that you can create more even. And that means that you can fucking rest. So I hope that I drove that point into you. That's the main message here. You guys also have Venus in the 11th, trining Neptune in the 3rd. And so I feel like your friends and your community around you are really going to support healing around this mindset. And I think they're going to be kind of that source of reprieve and uplift in your time of need. You guys also have Mars retrograde in Gemini in the 6th, and that's part of the reason why you're working yourself to death. But when Mars is retrograde, the work doesn't flow as easily as before. So you're working super hard, and you might not see as many results for it. So that's also another warning I want to tell you. Not to tell you not to work, but that if you have unexpected hiccups and things don't work out quite the same way that you wanted in regards to the outcome of your work, don't beat yourself up about it entirely, because that's kind of part of what this is. But that might not be the case. I was listening to another astrologer talk about how Mars retrograde can bring blessings from our previous work. So that might be more so what it relates to. Regardless, this Mars in the 6th is squaring Neptune in the 3rd. So there may be ways in which you feel like you really want to relax, but this kind of work hard mentality is like, no, I can't relax. And so these things are kind of at odds with each other until the end of the month, where when Mars finally trines Saturn in the 2nd, I think you'll start to realize that you can ease up a bit, you can actually relax a little bit, and I think you'll give yourself that space to do so. The last thing I'll say is you have Jupiter in the 3rd, sextiling Pluto in the 1st. So all of this process is about shifting your mindset to be growth-oriented and to realize that you are empowered. And that's all about what Pluto in the 1st does. Like, I create the change, I am the agency, and I don't have to be driven by fear. And I think that's what Jupiter in the 3rd is having you do. It's helping you be driven by inspiration, by growth, by excitement, by learning, and not by fear. And I think that this is ultimately going to rewire your cellular makeup so that you feel like anything is possible for you. And you're not, again, kind of resorting to those old mindsets. So that's what I'm seeing for you, Capricorn. Before you click away, watch your sun sign. And also, I am leading a workshop on Mars, which is the archetype of the warrior. So we're going to be talking about our particular charts and see our own inner warrior and our own special essence with that, because of course each of our charts are different. And we're going to be talking about how to best embody this warrior. So this is the person in us that's going to defend us, that's going to be driven, sexual, angry, all of those things. And sometimes it's hyperactive and underactive. And so in this workshop, we're going to be working on how to balance that and even how to identify when you are in or out of balance. So definitely check that out in the description box down below. There will be a recording there as well. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye. All right, up next we have my beautiful Aquarius risings. For you guys, this eclipse in Taurus, this Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your 4th house, and it is opposing the sun in the 10th house. So the moon, the Uranus, the north node are all together in your 4th. Sun, Mercury, Venus, south node are in Scorpio in your 10th. So there may be some ways in which you guys are undergoing some radical change in your home or your family life. And this has been long overdue. Wherever we're experiencing this change, it has been a long time coming. And in particular, Saturn has been the culprit for why we haven't made this change on our own. So for many of us, we're getting forced into a new situation, or we're finally going to make the change that we have been wanting to make, but that we've been inhibiting ourselves from actually doing. So Saturn in the 1st house equates to us holding ourselves back. And this eclipse is squaring Saturn in the 4th. So Sun and Moon squaring Saturn in the 1st. I don't know if I said 4th, I meant 1st. So Saturn in the 1st, as I mentioned, is about limiting ourselves, feeling like we can't do more. And we are oftentimes confronted with our own sense of restrictions and boundaries. And this can come from beliefs, this can come from past actions, this can come from self-sabotaging behavior. Regardless, we're bumping up against ourselves constantly. This is not an issue with others. This is an issue with ourselves. And so Saturn in the first is here to help build resilience, self-understanding, hard work, but sometimes it tries to keep us a little bit too grounded and too realistic, which has been the case for most of 2021. And now we're finally edging out of that comfort zone and pushing ourselves past this limit. In particular, it's going to manifest as us finally making changes in some area of our life related to our home or our family. And this could have to do with our emotions as well, but ultimately, I think it's going to be manifesting for many of us in a quite literal way, because Taurus North Node in the fourth house wants us to create stability in our lives. But Saturn in the first wants to create stability through security, through holding on to things and resisting change. And sometimes the only way to find real security and real stability is actually by blowing up our existing foundations and rebuilding something much more authentic, much more real and true to who we are, and aligned with what we actually want in our lives. So something around your home, your family, or even your emotional nature or your relationship with your family or roommates, all of those things have been off balance. And you guys need to get in tune with yourself and be honest with yourself and reflect where it has been off balance and invite this change into your life so that it doesn't become thrust upon you. And I do think that for many of you guys, this could be a highly emotional and stressful time. So I feel like there's something here that is brewing up a lot of triggers, which is very fourth house. Like when you go home for Thanksgiving and you feel like you've just evolved so much and you're so conscious, and then you see your family again and you're like, why am I acting like a 13-year-old girl? That is this vibe. You know, it's like I'm confronted with parts of myself that may feel like I'm triggered by certain people or by certain events within my own home. And it's ultimately here to show you where you have become emotionally dysregulated. I pulled the Queen of Cups and the Nine of Swords. The Queen of Cups masters her emotions, but the Nine of Swords is somebody who's worried, who doesn't feel like they have mastery over their own mind. And so I feel like recently you've been straddling these two worlds. Saturn in the first is trying to help you become masterful and disciplined over yourself, but it's ultimately also become a little bit restrictive and stagnating. And I think that ultimately there is some part of you that is also feeling like you haven't acknowledged this really key inner child within you. You haven't expressed emotions in the right moments in the right way. And as a result, it either manifests as anxiety or as being maybe angry or overly dominant, because I did pull this leadership card, which has very strong Leo energy. And one of the things it was saying was to use your powers wisely. You will have a strong effect on those around you. And maybe some of you guys have ill-used that power and it has come out and hurt people. That was one of the things it was warning against. That might not be true for all of you, but the important thing here is that you are becoming a leader with Saturn in your first. You're becoming that resilient, hardworking, respectable person that people look up to. And you're not going to get there if you're emotionally dysregulated. But the only way to do that is not by bulldozing your inner child, not by not having feelings. It's by actually processing the things that you feel and letting them free. And so for many of you, this could show up in a very practical way as a change in your home and your family. And then for others of you, it could reflect those deeper shifts emotionally where you're becoming more able to release the inner child and express the feelings as you feel them, so they don't build up and turn into rage or anxiety, which are the most common things, or depression, which is a suppression of all of the energy. So those are kind of like the three most clear symptoms. Are you disengaging with your life? Are you extremely anxious or worried? Or are you angry? Because either one of those things is going to indicate that you have been having this person inside of you that hasn't been free emotionally to express, to feel, to to roam around and to, yeah, all those things. And as a result, it's manifesting in unhealthy ways. And so I feel like this is ultimately very healing for you. And whatever does happen at this eclipse is ultimately going to bring this emotional release that has been long building within you. And this could be stuff that goes way back. This could be stuff that goes back to your childhood, that triggers childhood wounding where your family treated you a certain way or people at school treated you a certain way, and someone bullies you or does something to you at this eclipse, and it's like bursting out, and you're finally able to express these really deeply buried, bottled up emotions. So this is extremely cathartic, but it could keep you up at night. It could keep you a little bit worried. And ultimately, this is helpful, though. It's going to help you surpass this experience, because it's like keeping this really wound up energy within you, and it's like it's gotta release at some point. So while it may be something that provokes anxiety now and uncertainty now about, you know, maybe changes within the home or within yourself or within your family that you're not certain about, ultimately it's here to release you from this burden of pent up emotion and history, and maybe an unhealthy way of processing emotions or an unhealthy household. There's something here shifting that's liberating you from that. And there is some deep psychic healing happening where you might be in a limbo or a liminal state where you don't have ground to land on. And that can feel really disorienting. An eclipse, a lunar eclipse in the 4th house, can feel like, oh, I just got my home taken away. Where am I going to go? Or this big change happened in my family, and now I feel like this stable part of my life is suddenly rocky, and I don't really know where to put my feet. And that can feel really disquieting and discomforting. And that 9 of Swords represents that. I think you guys will be up at night worrying about this. But ultimately, as I mentioned, it's here to bring you to this Queen of Cups, where you actually feel like you're honoring your feelings. You're not tiptoeing around your house. There's not unspoken feelings within the family. There's not all this pent up emotions from childhood kind of being triggered at all those different points in time. And I think ultimately it's helping you become a leader of your own emotions, your own life, and maybe of your own household. Maybe some of you will become more independent as a result of this eclipse happening. And I think it will be very healing. This protection card to me is telling me that this happened in your favor. It's ultimately protecting you from a worse outcome if you had stayed in that state of being or in that location or in that relationship with those people. So there's something shifting here that might give you anxiety at the time, but is ultimately a blessing in disguise. So please keep that in mind. This is a blessing in disguise. This is protecting you from more negative outcomes that could have resulted from an ongoing situation of not acknowledging something within yourself. You guys also have Venus in the 10th trining Neptune in the 2nd. So I actually think that this is going to result in more self-worth in your career. I think it's going to push you to succeed more in your career. I think it's ultimately going to help you become more in tune with what you really want to do, what you really want to manifest, and help you actually reorient your value systems. So maybe you'll direct some new energy into the areas of your life that really matter and kind of boost your self-esteem. And this might take some time, but ultimately I think you're just going to reprioritize your energy to becoming a better person, to becoming more aligned with what you really want. You have Mars retrograde in Gemini in the 5th, squaring Neptune in the 2nd. So there may still be some confusion, though, about maybe how to make money or how to actually show up in the best way possible in this kind of state, how to express all of the things that you want to express, or how to just be easygoing and have fun, how to create all the things that you normally do. You might also be kind of confused or uncertain about that at this time. And that's just a part of the process. And I think by the end of the month, when Mars trines Saturn in the 1st, you'll start to get your grounding about who you are now that this has happened and what that means for how you're meant to react to others around you. And then lastly, if Jupiter in Pisces in the 2nd house retrograde, sextiling Pluto in the 12th, this is my favorite aspect of all. And I think it's through this this death process, this letting go process, this surrendering process, this loss of control process, that you are gaining the most financial prosperity, the most value in your life, the most personal growth. It's through this that you're actually going to get what you want. So don't be deterred by the discomfort of this. If there is discomfort, which I kind of feel like there is with the Nine of Swords, it's temporary, and it's a vehicle to get you to the proper destination that you've actually been desiring, that your previous state of emotions and living situation and relationships wasn't going to get you. So this is the answer to your prayers, I swear. That is what I see for you, Aquarius Rising. Before you go, I am running a workshop on Saturday on Mars, the archetype of the warrior within us. I highly recommend checking it out. We're going to discover what that unique warrior essence is within your own personal chart and how to best balance it and lean into it in your life. So I haven't done anything like this before. It's very unique. I'm very excited. So check that out down below, and I hope you have a great one. Bye. All right, and last but not least, we have my beautiful Pisces rising. This Taurus lunar eclipse is happening in your third house, and it's conjunct Uranus in the north node there, and it's opposite the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and the south node in the ninth house. So the challenge of this eclipse is that it's squaring Saturn very tightly in the 12th. And I actually feel like you guys have been feeling this pressure of Saturn without realizing it, because Saturn can make us feel like we are alone in many ways. It can make us feel like we have to do things on our own, or like maybe the typical easy, joyous life is a little bit more strenuous or difficult. And it's usually because we're combating our own energy, our own self-doubt, and things that are actually going on a subconscious level, where we tend to self-sabotage or limit ourselves, especially through our mind. So again, our subconscious mind is feeling like there's a lot of fear, and it wants to hold on or control. And this is very opposite of Pisces energy, but this is kind of what you're navigating, this archetype or this energy. And this has been going on for a while, and Saturn has also been squaring Uranus for a while, and now it's finally being activated, this eclipse, for us to make radical changes to that area of our life. And it's really going to come in with this moon Uranus in the third through our mindset. It's funny because the third house is also about transportation, and I know a Pisces who just is going to get a new car soon. So it could look very literal, like I'm getting a new car, or I'm taking on this new responsibility, or I have these new plans or these new friends. But I think for many of you guys, it is going to also come down to the way that you perceive life and talk about life and think about things. But I feel like for many of you, because I pulled the Ace of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands, there is something new coming into your life that may have come up specifically around this last eclipse on the 25th of October, where you had an idea, where you had an opportunity, where you maybe bought something new, invested into something, or there was some kind of like creative or financial thing that came into your life that is actually proving to be like to weigh you down with this Ten of Wands. It's draining your energy. It's making you feel like you're having to, like you're spinning your wheels a little bit. So it's like this thing, that this shiny new opportunity is actually coming in a little bit as much of a curse as a blessing. And it's not to say that it's a curse, but I actually think that this is related to the square in Saturn in the 12th, where we tend to self-sabotage. So let's say, for example, that you have been really wanting to save up money to buy a house. Well, let's say that you instead spend a ton of money on like this brand new car. Or let's say that instead of saving your money, you're being very social and you're like going out with your friends, or you're spending money on traveling, and you're not really actually dedicating yourself to what matters for you long term. And so you're kind of self-sabotaging, but it's actually coming from a place of a subconscious belief that you can't have that thing, that you can't have what you want. And that again is a subconscious thing. So you might feel like, I believe in myself, especially with Jupiter in the first house and a Pisces rising. There tends to be a lot of optimism. But with Saturn here, there's actually more insidious things happening underneath the surface that are trying to be processed. And so I think what comes up is that this eclipse, you might realize how you have been dissipating your energy or your finances or your goals in a way that's not getting you what you want. And it has been almost contradictory against yourself. And it's like, oh, this new exciting thing, this new opportunity to bring me the abundance. But it has this kind of like shiny penny syndrome where it's like, oh, that's pretty. And then that's pretty. And it's not trying to say that you're all over the place, because that's more Gemini, but you're a mutable sign, so that you could be prone to that. But it's more so to say that there could be distractions that come in to that kind of try to give you the opportunity to pull away from your true desires and to sabotage yourself, to bring about this Saturn 12th house energy. Or those things can come in and you can realize, actually, this is what I truly, truly want and desire, and I believe I can have this. And so I'm going to focus all my energy on this particular thing. And I think what this is saying is that it's not that these other things that are distractions are not meant for you or are bad for you. It's that they may, if you invest too much time, money, and energy into them, they may take you away from what is really important right now. And so I think for many of you, it's going to be important to have some kind of plan, and to have sorry, I'm just trying to look at like this Four of Wands. I pulled up what that means in reverse, because this can be a really good card. But in reverse, I was like, I wonder what that means for them exactly. So it was talking about a personal celebration. So I do feel like you're having a victory here, but I also kind of feel like you're taking on more responsibility. And again, I think it could sometimes be something that could pull your energy away from your long-term goal, or distract you, or it could just mean that it's going to take you longer to get there. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, oh, because you did that thing, you're not going to have it, but it might delay the timeline a little bit. It might say, okay, instead of buying the house next February, you're going to buy the house next June because of those things that you were doing or spending money on or whatever. And so I feel like what this is trying to say with this Two of Wands is that it's time to also be very practical minded. And Uranus in the third house is saying that your strategic mind, the one that can pick up information and know the right thing to do logically, is getting a boost. And it's going to help you overcome the self-sabotage that can happen with Saturn in the 12th. The self-doubt and all the subconscious limitations that we impose upon ourselves. And so I think that your logical mind is finally winning out, where you're like, okay, I have this plan. I know I can have what I want because I'm saving this much a month and I have this deadline, and I know the mortgage is going to cost this much and it's this percentage down and all of those things. So what I'm seeing here is that I feel like you guys are starting to see how something is going to actually bear fruit and manifest in your life. But there may have been things recently that came in that kind of felt like an extra burden or delayed your timeline in some way. I feel like that's like a separate message, but that's something coming through for me there. Regardless, if you have patience in your strength, you are going to get to your desired outcome. I see it happening for you. I just think you're going to have to maybe have a little bit more of like that burden of, I have to carry this log for just a mile extra because I ate that piece of cake. It's like this little extra, like you're already having to kind of endure a little bit, and now you have to endure just a little bit more because of a new opportunity that came your way. Doesn't mean it's not going to pay off, but it does mean that you could get a little bit tired, and you might have to plan very strategically about how to utilize different skills or manage your energy in order to make it all happen in a way that doesn't lead to burnout for you. You also have Venus in the ninth trining Neptune in the first. So I think that this could actually help you with that. It could help you know when to rest, when to act on divine inspiration, and really flow energetically instead of maybe pushing yourself, which I don't think you have a problem doing as a Pisces rising. Anyway, you have Mars retrograde in Gemini in the fourth house, squaring Neptune in the first. So there may be ways in which your home life and your desire for a home, or to fix things within the home, or to work within the home, or your family, things that you have to take care of there, that area of your life, or even you're dealing with your emotions, like, is going to ultimately detract from your ability to rest. And so it will take some time to learn how to find space for both. And I think by the end of the month, because Mars will trine Saturn by the end of the month, that you'll figure out how to create that flow for yourself. Lastly, you have Jupiter in your first house, retrograde in Pisces, sextiling Pluto in the 11th. I think this is super great. This is telling you that you're playing the long game. So even though you might have taken on an extra burden at the short period or right now, you are playing the long game anyway. You have the strength and the endurance to keep going, and you're going to be able to manifest what you desire because of that. So that's what I'm seeing for you, Pisces. I hope it resonates. Before you hop off, I'm having a Mars workshop on Saturday. Definitely check that out. We're going to be talking about the archetype of the warrior within your own personal chart, as well as how to embody and work with it, and how to balance it out if it's over or underactive in your life. Very practical, but also energetic as well. And I think it's going to really benefit everyone who attends. So I hope you check it out in the description box down below, and I hope you have a great one too.